Sakamoto emerged inside one of the buildings, equipped with a sword in one hand and a gun in the other. An explosion suddenly rocked the structure, exposing a group of assassins intent on eliminating him. Spotting him immediately, they unleashed a barrage of bullets. Sakamoto, with remarkable precision, deflected every shot with his sword before launching his counterattack. He struck down the first attacker with a swift slash, splattering blood onto another gang member. Without hesitation, he turned and shot the second man from behind. As two more assailants advanced, Sakamoto strangled one and shot the other in quick succession. The remaining assassins retaliated with machine guns, firing relentlessly. Sakamoto evaded the hail of bullets with effortless agility, retaliating with deadly accuracy. He eliminated them all, sparing only one who frantically searched for him in terror. Sakamoto reappeared unexpectedly and ended the final confrontation with a single precise shot. Afterward, Sakamoto decided to abandon his violent past and embraced a peaceful life. While shopping one day, he encountered a beautiful woman whose presence deeply moved him. Falling in love, he made the decision to leave his criminal life behind. They married, and their life together blossomed. With the arrival of their child, Sakamoto devoted himself entirely to his family, opening a small shop and dedicating his days to a simpler existence. One day, Shin, a former associate from his gang days, came searching for him. Meanwhile, at the shop, Sakamoto spent time with a young boy who often visited. The boy tried to hit a target drawn on the glass with a fake arrow but missed. Sakamoto's wife mentioned how frequently the boy stopped by. As the boy prepared another attempt, his bag spilled open, causing school supplies to scatter. An ink bottle rolled out, leaving a stain on a nearby customer's clothes. The man, furious over the spilled ink, grabbed the boy by his shirt and began shouting angrily. Sakamoto remained calm, observing the situation as the man berated the boy. When the boy accidentally stained the man's clothes again, the man raised his hand as if to strike him. Sakamoto stepped in, imagining for a brief moment using a pen to subdue the man, though he didn't act on the thought. The man, undeterred, insulted Sakamoto's weight before storming out of the shop. The boy, overwhelmed and in tears, thanked Sakamoto for protecting him. Sakamoto's wife and daughter comforted the boy, offering him reassurance. Shin entered the shop, commending Sakamoto for his speed and noting his restraint during the incident. Revealing his mind-reading ability, Shin pointed out that Sakamoto could have easily dealt with the man. Sakamoto briefly imagined retaliating against Shin, but Shin, aware of his thoughts, chided him for even considering it. He reminded Sakamoto of their past partnership and his unwavering loyalty over the years. Sakamoto served Shin a meal, and Shin used the opportunity to question him. He asked if Sakamoto had truly abandoned his former life of crime and killing, wondering if the shop symbolized a fresh start. Shin couldn't help but comment on Sakamoto's significant weight gain, urging him to return to his old self. Sakamoto responded simply, stating that he was no longer the person he used to be. Shin pressed on, recalling Sakamoto's fearsome reputation and the respect he commanded among powerful figures in their past. Growing frustrated, Shin insisted that Sakamoto should reclaim his former glory. Unmoved, Sakamoto continued eating, ignoring Shin's attempts to provoke him. Exasperated, Shin remarked that Sakamoto had once been content with street food and never indulged in such refined meals. As Shin prepared to light a cigarette, Sakamoto swiftly snatched it from his hand, pointing to a no-smoking sign nearby. Shin was momentarily stunned by Sakamoto's display of strength. It was a subtle but clear warning. Sakamoto could overpower him effortlessly if he chose to. While Shin was still processing this, a man riding a bicycle arrived and greeted Sakamoto warmly, asking for his help with a favor. Shin, surprised, observed this new side of Sakamoto, a stark contrast to the fearsome image he once knew. Sakamoto and Shin followed the man to his home, where he explained that a tree in his yard had grown too large, its branches spreading uncontrollably. Sakamoto, with remarkable speed and precision, pruned the branches, leaving Shin in disbelief. Shortly after, a woman approached, explaining that her young daughter refused to eat. Sakamoto calmly stepped in and resolved the issue, managing to feed the little girl with ease. Later, Sakamoto encountered two children crying and fighting over a single ball, each insisting on keeping it for themselves. Without hesitation, Sakamoto split the ball in half, handing each child a piece and bringing the argument to an end. Shin's frustration with Sakamoto's peaceful lifestyle grew. He accused Sakamoto of hiding his true nature behind acts of kindness and criticized his appearance, calling it disgraceful. Declaring his intention to leave, Shin turned to go. Just before departing, a small child playfully tossed a toy arrow at Shin's head and ran off laughing. Annoyed, Shin scolded the child but refrained from further reaction. As Shin got into his car, he reflected on how much had changed since he last saw Sakamoto 5 years ago. He noted Sakamoto's considerable weight gain, but also recognized his extraordinary speed, which remained intact. Despite his frustration, Shin felt a subtle sense of happiness, secretly wishing they could team up again. This excitement caused him to slam his head against the car's dashboard repeatedly, shaking the vehicle. Alarmed pedestrians nearby scattered. Shin received a call from his boss, who impatiently inquired whether he had succeeded in convincing Sakamoto to return. When Shin admitted he had failed, the boss coldly asked if he had killed Sakamoto instead. Shin explained that he hadn't, insisting that Sakamoto was now overweight and no longer a threat. Furious, the boss reminded Shin of the gang's unyielding rule: anyone who retires must be eliminated. He issued a chilling warning. If Shin didn't handle Sakamoto, someone else would, and Shin would be eliminated as well. Overwhelmed by the ultimatum, Shin ended the call abruptly. Later that evening, Shin went about his routine, buying supplies, taking a bath, eating, and finally lying in bed, deep in thought. The boss's threat loomed heavily over him. He realized that if he didn't act, Sakamoto's life would be in immediate danger. Clutching his weapon, Shin resolved to confront the situation himself. Memories of their past battles together flooded his mind as he steeled himself for what was to come. The next day, Shin visited Sakamoto at his store under the pretense of saying goodbye before leaving the country. In the middle of their conversation, Shin suddenly drew his gun and fired at Sakamoto. To his shock, Sakamoto deflected the bullet midair using a piece of hard candy from his mouth, altering its trajectory and evading harm. In an instant, Sakamoto disappeared, leaving Shin scrambling to locate him, unable to read his thoughts. Sakamoto distracted Shin by tossing a pack of chocolates, forcing him to react. Using the candy as makeshift projectiles, Sakamoto launched a series of rapid, precise strikes, mimicking the speed and force of bullets. Shin dodged them skillfully, retreating to create distance. As Shin tried to regain his composure and aim again, Sakamoto disrupted him by throwing a pack of pastries, further complicating his attack. As Shin paused to reassess, Sakamoto reappeared behind him and delivered a decisive, powerful blow, knocking Shin unconscious. Just before fading into unconsciousness, Shin caught a glimpse of Sakamoto as he had once been, strong, commanding, and fearsome. Shin awoke to the sound of voices in Sakamoto's home. Sakamoto's daughter quickly noticed his return to consciousness and informed her mother. Looking around in confusion, Shin saw Sakamoto's wife preparing a large meal. She warmly asked how much rice he wanted, but Shin, still wary, replied modestly, suspecting the food might be poisoned. Despite his suspicion, he started eating and was immediately struck by the meal's incredible taste. Overwhelmed, he admitted that he had never eaten anything so delicious and sincerely complimented the food, calling it excellent. Sakamoto's wife laughed as Shin marveled at the meal, joking that his reaction reminded her of how Sakamoto used to behave. Meanwhile, Sakamoto focused on feeding his daughter, displaying the quiet joy of his retired life. Watching this scene, Shin reflected on the happiness Sakamoto had found after leaving his violent past behind. When Shin prepared to leave, Sakamoto accompanied him to the door. Embarrassed, Shin thanked him for the dinner, and Sakamoto gestured to a sign on the shop that read, "We hope to see you again." Returning to the gang's hideout, Shin faced the wrath of his boss, who demanded to know if he had killed Sakamoto. Shin's silence infuriated the boss, who berated him for failing to follow orders. Despite the ridicule from the other gang members, Shin pleaded for Sakamoto to be left in peace, explaining that he had a family now and had changed. He even offered to sacrifice himself if it meant sparing Sakamoto's life. The boss coldly told Shin that if he wanted to save Sakamoto, he should kill himself. However, the boss had no intention of leaving Sakamoto alone. Reading his thoughts, Shin revealed his distrust, exposing the boss's deceitful plan. Enraged, the boss ordered the gang to kill Shin. Gunfire erupted, and Shin was forced to flee for his life. Unbeknownst to them, Sakamoto had been listening through a hidden device. Back at his shop, Sakamoto began transforming the space into a makeshift armory, preparing himself by selecting a gun. Meanwhile, Shin fought back against the gang. Using his weapon, he eliminated 4 members in rapid succession. One gang member tried to ambush him, but Shin read his thoughts and avoided the attack. When the assailant emerged, Shin swiftly countered, appearing behind him and delivering a precise kick to the neck, knocking him unconscious. Another member aimed a heavy weapon at Shin, but again, Shin's psychic ability allowed him to dodge the strike. The boss regrouped with the remaining gang members, furious at their inability to capture Shin. Explaining Shin's ability to read their thoughts, the boss ordered them to attack from a distance to avoid detection. Surrounding Shin, they cut off his escape routes. With only 1 magazine of bullets left, Shin carefully planned his next move. He managed to take down 2 more attackers but was struck in the leg by a bullet, immobilizing him. As the gang closed in, their guns aimed directly at him. Shin found himself cornered and staring at an impending end. Sakamoto arrived just in time, swiftly incapacitating the gang members surrounding Shin with precise and powerful strikes. The gang leader spotted Sakamoto and immediately ordered his men to kill him. The gang launched a fierce attack, but Sakamoto countered with remarkable skill, using only a pair of chopsticks as his weapon. In a blur of motion, he defeated several gang members before one managed to fire at him. Sakamoto effortlessly caught the bullets with his chopsticks, moved behind the shooter, and hurled him into 2 others, knocking them down. Another gang member charged at Sakamoto with a sword, launching a series of attacks, but Sakamoto dodged each strike with ease and sent the attacker flying with a powerful kick. 2 more gang members fired machine guns at him, but Sakamoto used 2 pens to deflect the bullets. In a split second, he threw the pens with pinpoint accuracy, instantly taking out both shooters. Sakamoto then leaped into the air, grabbed a long rope, and landed forcefully on 2 more attackers, knocking them to the ground. With the same rope, he tied up 2 others and tossed them aside. Continuing his assault, Sakamoto dashed toward another gang member, seized his weapon, and destroyed it before landing a punch that shattered the man's teeth. When another attacker attempted to stab him from behind, Sakamoto evaded the knife and knocked him unconscious with a single blow. The gang leader, desperate, ordered the remaining men to open fire on Sakamoto. Moving at incredible speed, Sakamoto dodged the bullets, wielding a sharp weapon to disarm and eliminate the attackers. Shin, stunned by Sakamoto's incredible display of skill, asked how he had found him. Sakamoto picked up Shin's gun and showed him a listening device he had planted earlier, revealing his careful planning. Impressed, Shin admitted Sakamoto was always 1 step ahead. Before he could finish his thought, Sakamoto cut him off, tossing him a work shirt and informing him that he would now be working at the shop. The scene shifted to the store, where Sakamoto and Shin were dressed in matching work uniforms. Shin grumbled about Sakamoto eating near him, pointing out that the noodles were nearly gone because of him. Sakamoto's wife and daughter soon arrived, and the little girl ran to Shin, hugging him tightly with excitement. Later, Shin helped an elderly woman locate an item in the store, showing patience and care. A young boy then approached Shin, asking him to play. Shin politely explained that he was busy, but promised to play once he finished his tasks. The boy, curious, asked Shin if he enjoyed his new job. Shin hesitated, admitting he wasn't sure yet, but acknowledging it was better than his previous one. When the boy asked about Shin's former job, Shin read Sakamoto's thoughts and realized he was being silently threatened to keep the truth hidden. Nervously, Shin told the boy he used to work as a cleaner. Sakamoto glanced at him briefly but said nothing, continuing to eat his food. Shin continued to restock shelves and assist customers, handling his tasks with surprising efficiency. When Sakamoto arrived, Shin couldn't help but bring up their recent battle, praising Sakamoto's remarkable combat skills despite his noticeable weight gain. Sakamoto, visibly annoyed, told Shin to stop talking and focus on his work. Undeterred, Shin persisted, expressing genuine admiration for how impressive Sakamoto had been during the fight. Overhearing the conversation, Sakamoto's wife stepped in and questioned him, asking if he had returned to fighting. Sakamoto immediately denied it, reminding her of his commitment to their agreement. She firmly reminded him of their marriage rule. If he ever returned to combat, their relationship would end. Sakamoto reassured her that he hadn't forgotten. Curious, Shin asked what the rule was, but Sakamoto's irritation grew. Imagining ways to silence Shin, Sakamoto caused Shin to feel an unexplained sharp pain, prompting Shin to yell at him to stop. Frustrated, Sakamoto told Shin to keep quiet. Later, Sakamoto and Shin went to Chinatown, where Shin marveled at the lively and colorful streets. Noticing Sakamoto purchasing pork, Shin assumed it was for the store. Sakamoto clarified that it was for his wife and daughter. Shin commented on how deeply Sakamoto must love his family and once again asked about the marriage rule. Sakamoto ignored the question and continued walking. While they wandered through Chinatown, a young girl named Oh accidentally broke a window and fell from a nearby building, landing directly on Sakamoto and spilling the bag of meat he had just bought. Sakamoto stared furiously at the mess, clearly irritated. Shin tried to console him, suggesting they could clean the meat and still use it. But Sakamoto dismissed the idea, declaring it ruined. Before they could leave, a group of men chasing O arrived. The girl, despite her small stature, confidently prepared herself to face them. Shin, worried, urged Sakamoto to leave to avoid getting involved. But Sakamoto, still fuming over his ruined purchase, remarked that they had spoiled his daughter's meal. Shin argued it wasn't worth getting involved, but Sakamoto remained rooted in place. One of the men mocked O, comparing her to a cat, trying to escape by jumping from windows. O stood her ground, declaring that she didn't run from men she considered nothing more than puppets. Two of the men charged at her, but she swiftly countered, kicking one to the ground and overpowering the other with ease. The remaining three decided to surround her, attempting to cut off her escape. O leapt over one of them, striking him from behind, then unleashed a brutal series of attacks on the second. Finally, she grabbed the third man and hurled him into a nearby dumpster. A large man from the group grabbed O from behind, pinning her arms tightly. Another gang member approached, wielding a knife and threatening to stab her. Before he could act, another intervened, suggesting they should torture her instead. The man with the knife grinned maliciously, proposing to start by cutting her legs to ensure she could never escape again. Just as he raised the blade, Sakamoto intervened, breaking the knife in half with a food utensil. Shin quickly swung his bag at the man, restraining O, striking him hard enough to force him to release her and collapse. But Sakamoto followed up with a devastating punch to his chest, knocking him to the ground. Another gang member drew a gun, ordering everyone to stay still. O acted swiftly, striking the man's hands, causing him to drop the weapon, finishing with a powerful kick that sent him sprawling. Shin, overwhelmed by disbelief, wondered who this mysterious girl could be. Meanwhile, Sakamoto glanced sorrowfully at the spilled pork, still lamenting its loss. The remaining gang members, unwilling to give up, launched an attack against Sakamoto. Sakamoto quickly scooped O into his arms and bolted, dodging the hail of gunfire. His swift movements left the gang struggling to keep up, and they eventually gave up the pursuit, too exhausted to continue. At the gang's hideout, one of the men who had pursued O nervously explained the situation to their leader, Dan. He described how two men had helped her escape. Furious, Dan reprimanded him for failing again and struck him with a staff, reminding him that an entire clan had been wiped out to capture her. Dismissed in disgrace, the man began to leave, but Beito, the gang's swordsman, stepped forward. Without warning, Beito decapitated the man, holding the severed head and mockingly pretending to listen to its complaints. The horrifying act left everyone in the room frozen in fear. Beito's brother stepped forward, reprimanding him sternly for joking about such serious matters and calling him a fool. He added that the taste of the situation was unpleasant. Dan addressed the two brothers, emphasizing the critical importance of capturing the girl. He explained that she possessed a key vital to controlling the black market. The brothers listened intently as Dan ordered them to retrieve her at all costs. Beito confidently declared that anyone who dared to stand in their way would be killed. Dan, approving their resolve, gave them full authority to do whatever was necessary to achieve their goal. O, Shin, and Sakamoto continued running, weaving through alleyways and leaping from rooftop to rooftop to evade their pursuers. Shin, still confused, demanded to know why O was being hunted. She explained that she was the daughter of a powerful mafia boss, and the men chasing her were after the key she carried. As they moved, she showed Shin the key, a small but intricately designed piece of metal hanging around her neck. Shin suggested she hand over the key to avoid further trouble, but O firmly refused. She explained that the key unlocked a vault containing all her family's treasures, a legacy her father had entrusted to her. Memories of her parents filled her mind, her mother tying the key around her neck and urging her to flee while her father fought off waves of enemies to buy her time. Her parents had sacrificed everything to keep the key out of the wrong hands. O vowed never to relinquish it, declaring that she couldn't face her father in the afterlife if she failed to protect it. Apologizing for the trouble she had caused, O thanked Sakamoto and Shin for their help and leapt away, attempting to distance herself from them. Shin tried to pursue her, but Sakamoto grabbed his arm, stopping him. Turning to O, Sakamoto asked if she knew how to cook pork. Surprised, O responded that her father had taught her, and she could prepare it well. Sakamoto calmly declared to Shin that their shopping trip was over and announced that they would handle O's problem. He made a deal with her, promising to eliminate the gang chasing her if she cooked pork for them afterward. Before Shin could protest, his psychic ability detected an incoming attack. He shouted a warning to Sakamoto, but it was too late. Beito appeared out of nowhere, delivering a powerful kick to Sakamoto's face that sent him staggering backward. In an instant, the gang surrounded Sakamoto inside a nearby building. Shin grew increasingly anxious about Sakamoto's situation, his worry mounting with every passing moment. Lu approached him, acknowledging the gravity of their predicament. Meanwhile, Sun taunted Bato, mocking the weakness of his strikes and suggesting he had lost his edge. Bato shrugged off the criticism, dismissing the importance of his initial blows, stating that he enjoyed the thrill of killing and disposing of bodies. Sun, unimpressed, retorted that even Bato's killing techniques had grown sloppy over time. Shin, confused by the exchange, asked who these men were. Lu explained that they were Sun and Bato, notorious assassins known for their ruthless efficiency and sheer pleasure in killing. Their reputation came not only from their inability to fail, but also from their grotesque hobby of drawing portraits of their victims, a twisted testament to their unhinged minds. They found joy in their work, no matter the price of their contract. Bato, seemingly indifferent, remarked to Sun that their infamy wasn't such a bad thing. Sun disagreed, arguing that killers should avoid drawing too much attention to themselves. Just then, Shin launched an attack on Sun, aiming a strike directly at him. Sun blocked it effortlessly and mocked Shin, asking if he was angry over the supposed death of his friend. Shin, undeterred, confidently stated that Sun was foolish to think Sakamoto could be defeated. Shin declared that no one truly understood the depth of Sakamoto's strength as a warrior. Sun scoffed, dismissing Shin's words as childish bravado. Meanwhile, Bato moved silently toward Lu from behind, sword raised for a surprise attack. Before he could land the blow, Sakamoto reappeared, delivering a crushing punch to Bato's face. The sheer force of the strike sent Bato flying into the ground, shattering the floor and causing him to crash through to the level below. Watching the scene, Sun casually commented on the power of Sakamoto's punch, while Bato, sprawled among the debris, muttered that the old building was easy to damage. Turning his attention to Lu, Sun addressed her mockingly. He asked if she would hand over the key, promising to kill her gently afterward. Lu stood her ground, her voice firm as she declared that the key was her only inheritance from her father and that she would never part with it. Sun sneered, dismissing her words as outdated sentimentality and questioning why she would risk her life for something as trivial as a key. Lu, angered by his condescension, shouted at Sun to stay quiet and charged at him in fury. Before she could reach him, Sakamoto stepped in, intercepting her mid-charge and throwing her back to prevent her from acting recklessly. Furious at being stopped, Lu glared at Sakamoto, but before she could respond, Shin stepped forward, urging her to stay calm. He reminded her not to let their words provoke her into losing control. Lu turned to Shin, her voice heavy with emotion, and explained the significance of the vault. It held all her ancestors' possessions, a priceless legacy entrusted to her. She revealed that her father had died protecting it, killed by the very people now hunting her. As she recounted her story, Sun suddenly hurled a knife at her. Frozen in shock, Lu stood motionless as the blade streaked toward her. At the last moment, Sakamoto intercepted it mid-air, saving her life. Sun fixed his glare on Sakamoto, mocking him for interfering. He suggested that Sakamoto should have let the knife strike, reuniting Lu with her parents in death. Unfazed, Sakamoto met Sun's taunt with a calm but firm reply. No one there could give him orders. Lu, still shaken, turned to Sakamoto and asked why he was so willing to help her. Sakamoto's mind drifted to a memory from his past. He recalled returning home one evening with a gift for his wife, only to be met with her disapproving gaze. When she asked why he was late, he explained that he had been working. Sensing the truth, she pressed him further, asking if his work was the usual killing. Reluctantly, he admitted it, explaining that the job had funded the gift. His wife refused the present, her voice filled with anguish, calling it tainted with blood, just like his hands and face. She declared that there was no point in continuing their relationship and suggested they part ways. Overwhelmed by grief, she stepped toward the edge of the building. Horrified, Sakamoto threw the gift aside and leaped after her. Mid-air, he caught her, and they clung to each other as they fell. The pair landed in a snowbank. Emerging from the icy sphere, his wife admitted she had misjudged the height of the building, her initial intention shaken by the reality of her actions. She approached Sakamoto, her tone soft but firm, and told him that one day he might understand the pain of losing someone he loved. She reminded him that everyone has someone they care for deeply, someone they would never want to lose. She then asked him to promise her that he would stop fighting and use his skills to help others instead. The memory faded, pulling Sakamoto back to the present. Shin, moved by the weight of the story, looked at Sakamoto with a deep sadness. Sakamoto turned to Shin and with quiet resolve declared, "That's my rule. I don't kill." The two brothers, Sun and Bato, launched a fierce coordinated attack. Bato targeted Sakamoto with a series of strikes, but each one missed its mark as Sakamoto skillfully evaded. Sun followed up, wielding his weapon with precision, but Sakamoto blocked every blow with effortless control. Meanwhile, Bato turned his attention to Shin, attempting to land a hit. Shin dodged the attack and countered with a kick, but it had little effect. Frustrated, Sun threw another set, but this time Sakamoto caught the knives mid-air, with astonishing ease. Regrouping, the brothers exchanged a knowing glance. Sun asked if Bato was thinking what he was. Bato smirked and confirmed. They launched a synchronized flurry of rapid strikes aiming to overwhelm Sakamoto. But even their combined efforts proved futile, as Sakamoto evaded every attack without breaking a sweat. Shin approached Sakamoto to check on him, asking if he was alright. Sakamoto reassured him, admitting only that his muscles felt slightly stiff. Shin quickly applied a patch to ease the tension, helping Sakamoto recover. Frustrated and bewildered, Sun turned to Bato, questioning how Sakamoto managed to avoid every attack without a single scratch. Once again, Sun asked if Bato had the same idea as him. Bato nodded, and the two launched yet another assault. This time, Sakamoto ended the fight decisively, delivering a powerful blow to Bato's head. The strike sent Bato crashing to the ground, leaving him dazed and out of the fight. Sun, stunned by the sudden turn of events, launched a desperate attack on Sakamoto. But Sakamoto effortlessly broke Sun's weapon, leaving him in complete disbelief. Realizing the fight was hopeless, Sun shifted his focus to capturing Lu as a last-ditch effort. However, Shin, with quick reflexes, Shin threw a rope around Sun's neck and yanked him to the ground. Before Sun could recover, Sakamoto dropped a large refrigerator onto him, rendering him completely incapacitated. Lu, still in shock from everything she had witnessed, stared at Sakamoto and asked, "Who are you, really?" Sakamoto, as calm and composed as ever, simply replied, "We're just shop workers," before casually taking a bite of crab. The scene shifted to Dan, seething in his office as he furiously struck the vault, his frustration boiling over at his inability to unlock it and claim its treasures. His anger was interrupted when Bato and Sun were dragged in, bound, and visibly defeated. Dan, startled by their condition, demanded to know who had done this to them. Before he could react further, Lu emerged from the shadows, her knife pressed firmly against his neck. Dan froze, panicking as he begged for mercy, promising to obey her every demand. Lu, her voice icy, told him to shut up, reminding him that nothing he could say or do would bring her father back. Her rage unleashed, she pummeled Dan with a relentless series of punches and strikes, leaving him incapacitated. With one final blow, she knocked him to the ground, leaving him motionless. Shin, observing the scene, asked if she felt satisfied, half joking that he wouldn't mind adding a few punches himself. Sakamoto, in his usual calm demeanor, imagined silencing Shin permanently for his comment. Shin, noticing Sakamoto's expression, snapped at him, irritated, and told him to stop doing that. Sakamoto simply replied that Shin should stay out of it. As Lu caught her breath, she recalled her father's words of wisdom, never to kill in anger or in the streets, no matter how furious she became, and to focus instead on building a happy life. Gathering herself, she turned her attention to the vault. With a steady hand, she unlocked it, revealing a dazzling treasure trove that left everyone momentarily stunned. Shin, unable to resist, wandered inside and picked up a book, becoming immediately engrossed in its contents. Sakamoto, on the other hand, sifted through the jewels, captivated by the gleaming treasure. Lu, snapping back into focus, grabbed the book from Shin's hands, intent on discovering what her father had left behind. Among the treasures, she noticed a small container holding a letter. Opening it, she began reading her father's final words. Curious, Shin asked what the letter said. Lu explained that her father had written about the best drink ever and expressed his gratitude for it. Shin chuckled, joking that he hoped the drink was as good as her father claimed. The group then sat together on the floor, sharing a meal of pork. As they ate, Lu reflected on how much had been destroyed during the events leading up to this moment. Shin teased her, pointing out that it was all her fault. Sakamoto, unfazed, tasted the pork and declared it still delicious. Lu, trying it herself, nodded in agreement, commenting that it was absolutely excellent. Lu arrived at Sakamoto's shop 2 hours late, immediately drawing Shin's ire. He confronted her, demanding to know why she was so late. Lu brushed him off, dismissing the delay as insignificant. Shin, already frustrated, pointed out that being 2 hours late was anything but small. As Shin glanced at the refrigerator, he noticed it was completely disorganized. Pointing to the mess, he accused Lu of doing everything wrong. Lu, unimpressed, nonchalantly replied that organizing wasn't that important. Shin's frustration boiled over, and he remarked that she clearly had no work experience. In response, Lu sarcastically mentioned that she had experience helping her father wrap and bury bodies underground, leaving Shin speechless. Fuming, Shin stormed over to Sakamoto, urging him to fire Lu, claiming she wasn't fit for the job. Lu shrugged off the criticism, reiterating that organizing things wasn't essential. Shin argued that proper arrangement and order were crucial to the shop's work. Sakamoto finally intervened, telling Shin not to speak to Lu so harshly. He then turned to Lu, calmly asking her to apologize if she was late again in the future. Both Shin and Lu froze, staring at Sakamoto in disbelief, shocked by his unusually calm and diplomatic demeanor. Noticing their bewildered expressions, Sakamoto asked why they were looking at him as if he were a ghost. He then instructed Shin to join him outside and asked Lu to prepare the pork dishes he had ordered. Shin commented that he had never heard Sakamoto talk so much since joining the shop. Sakamoto replied casually, stating that he was simply speaking normally. Then, without missing a beat, he warned Shin to stop babbling so much, or he'd kill him. Taken aback, Shin thought to himself how much Sakamoto had changed, noting that his current demeanor was far from his usual reserved nature. Suddenly, another Sakamoto walked into the shop, leaving Shin utterly shocked and confused. The original Sakamoto remained calm, taking a seat as the newcomer greeted him. Without warning, the second Sakamoto lunged at him with a knife. The real Sakamoto dodged the attack effortlessly, countering by placing a weapon at the imposter's neck. The fake Sakamoto stepped back, laughing as his appearance transformed to reveal his true identity. Greeting Sakamoto as an old acquaintance, he admitted that he still had a few tricks up his sleeve, which he was eager to show off. Shin, puzzled by the stranger's presence, wondered who this man was and why he couldn't read his thoughts. The stranger chuckled, apologizing for the earlier attack, and introduced himself as an old friend of Sakamoto. With a sly grin, he claimed to be 18 years old and mentioned owning a shop on the same street. Lu, unconvinced, pointed out that there wasn't another shop nearby, while Shin added that the stranger looked far too young to be an old acquaintance of Sakamoto. Sakamoto clarified the truth. The man was indeed an old friend, though he was actually 27 years old. Despite Sakamoto's explanation, Shin and Lu remained skeptical and decided to take no chances. They tied the stranger to a chair to keep him restrained and prevent any potential escape. The stranger remained calm and revealed alarming news. Sakamoto's life was in immediate danger. He explained that there was a $1 million bounty on Sakamoto's head, enticing assassins everywhere to try and claim the reward. Shin scoffed at the amount, sarcastically commenting that it seemed insultingly low for someone of Sakamoto's caliber. The stranger, who introduced himself as Tojo, continued, explaining that the association had finalized the decision to kill Sakamoto the previous day. He warned that the news would spread far and wide by tomorrow, attracting a flood of attackers. At that moment, a pizza delivery man entered the shop, holding a large box and asking who had placed the order. Lu eagerly admitted it was hers, thrilled to see her pizza arrive. However, Shin's psychic ability kicked in, and he read the delivery man's thoughts, realizing he was an assassin. Before anyone could react, the delivery man dropped the facade, brandishing a weapon disguised as a pizza cutter. Lunging at Tojo, he pressed the blade against his neck and warned everyone not to move, threatening to kill him on the spot. Turning his attention to Sakamoto, the assassin became visibly irritated. Sakamoto, unfazed, continued eating his meal as though nothing was happening. The assassin, growing more agitated, shouted at Sakamoto, accusing him of ignoring him even as he issued threats. Before the situation could escalate further, Tojo acted swiftly. In one fluid motion, he overpowered the assassin, choking him into submission and rendering him completely helpless. After ensuring the threat was neutralized, Tojo turned to Shin and reiterated the truth of his earlier claims. With a serious tone, he proposed an alliance. Sakamoto, still composed, instructed Tojo to release the pizza assassin and leave. Tojo hesitated, questioning how Sakamoto planned to defend himself against the constant threats, and even asked what Sakamoto would do if Tojo became his enemy. Quickly brushing it off as a joke, Tojo reassured them he wasn't one of the attackers. Before stepping out, Tojo hinted that it might be time for Sakamoto to return to the battlefield and fight alongside him again. As Tojo was leaving, Sakamoto called out, asking who else was after him. Tojo smirked and replied that the details were classified, though he advised Sakamoto to remain calm and composed, given his past record of eliminating countless adversaries. Lu, curious, asked Tojo if all the assassins would use disguises like the pizza man. Tojo chuckled, admitting he didn't think so, but warned that assassins were unpredictable. Lifting the unconscious pizza man, Tojo turned to Sakamoto and said it was an honor to meet him again, a privilege before what might be his end. Before anyone could react, Tojo vanished, moving too quickly for Shin to follow. After Tojo's departure, Lu mentioned her plans to return to China. As she spoke, Sakamoto's gaze drifted to the untouched pizza. In another location, inside the headquarters of the association, a cleaner expressed frustration. He couldn't understand why so much effort was being spent on eliminating Sakamoto. Turning to his colleague, a man with long hair, he remarked that someone called the Black Figure was far more dangerous. The long-haired man hesitated before replying that Sakamoto's true potential was not to be underestimated. He suggested that Sakamoto, if he wished, could even kill him. Irritated, the cleaner snapped, demanding to know why his colleague was speaking to him at all. The long-haired man apologized, admitting he had a habit of saying unnecessary things. Then, as if to change the subject, he mentioned he was hungry and suggested they order pizza. The leader of the association entered the room, issuing a stern warning to his subordinates. He emphasized that underestimating Sakamoto would be a fatal mistake. They would need to catch him off guard, outside of his familiar environment, to have any chance of defeating him. He reminded them that Sakamoto was once one of their own, making him uniquely dangerous. The cleaner remained skeptical, questioning why such extreme caution was needed for someone who had been retired for 5 years. The long-haired man shared the doubt, suggesting that Sakamoto's combat skills might have dulled over time. Their conversation came to an abrupt halt when Sakamoto's image suddenly appeared on their surveillance feed. Calm and confident, Sakamoto looked directly into the camera, declaring that he was waiting for any of them to come to him and promising to bury them in his shop. Stunned, the assassins froze, unable to believe that Sakamoto could see them. Before they could react further, Sakamoto shot the hidden surveillance camera embedded in the pizza box. Later, Sakamoto and Shin sat outside the shop, reflecting on the recent turn of events. Shin voiced his doubts about Tojo, admitting he wasn't sure if he could be trusted. If Tojo's warning was true, however, they were likely heading for serious trouble. Sakamoto, calm as ever, reassured Shin that they were fine for now, enjoying good food and drink, but emphasized the importance of being prepared. He added that they should work on improving their skills, reminding Shin that their enemies could come from anywhere and be anyone. Sakamoto's wife and daughter approached them, with his daughter bouncing with excitement. She cheerfully announced that she was ready to go. Shin, curious, asked where she was headed. She explained with enthusiasm that they were going to the amusement park, a trip she had been looking forward to for a long time. Sakamoto, slightly bewildered, admitted he didn't remember agreeing to such a plan, but quickly conceded, agreeing to join them. The next day, the group found themselves at the amusement park. While the daughter was thrilled, the adults quickly grew bored. They reluctantly joined her on a challenging amusement ride, which left them all dizzy and exhausted. Lu, visibly drained, collapsed onto a nearby bench, while Sakamoto groaned, clutching his stomach and muttering that he felt like vomiting. Shin, half concerned, jokingly offered to call a doctor, but Sakamoto's wife waved him off, assuring him that Sakamoto would recover soon. As they rested, Lu's attention was drawn to a magazine in Sakamoto's daughter's hands. The girl excitedly pointed out an article about Sugar Bunny, a massive rabbit she had been dying to see. Lu, flipping through the pages, joked that the rabbit was as big as a gang leader. Sakamoto's wife smiled, expressing her happiness at having everyone together and encouraging them to enjoy the day despite the earlier challenges. Meanwhile, Shin remained on edge, unable to shake off Tojo's warning about the bounty on Sakamoto. Turning to Lu, he suggested they take extra precautions to ensure the safety of Sakamoto's family. Shin emphasized that they needed to be vigilant and prevent anyone from getting close enough to harm them. Lu scanned the crowded amusement park, uneasy about the number of people, which made it difficult to identify any potential threats. Shin, noticing her concern, reassured her by explaining his ability to read the thoughts of those within a 30-meter radius. He added that if someone harbored murderous intent, he would sense their emotional energy immediately. Annoyed, Lu turned to Shin and asked if he also listened to her thoughts when they were together. Shin denied it, stating he was too preoccupied with other matters to bother. Somewhat relieved, Lu remarked that his skill was useful, albeit a bit invasive. Moments later, Shin sensed the presence of a killer nearby. His demeanor shifted as he warned Sakamoto of the approaching threat. Sakamoto acknowledged it with calm composure, while Lu stepped in to distract Sakamoto's wife and daughter, ensuring they remained oblivious to what was unfolding. The assassin, known as the Cleaner, emerged from the crowd, locking eyes with Sakamoto. The tension escalated as the two moved closer, silently sizing each other up. The Cleaner suddenly lunged, drawing a knife from his box. In a lightning-fast motion, Sakamoto snatched a pen from the assassin's pocket and stabbed it into his body, neutralizing him in a single efficient strike. Shin and Lu arrived immediately, working quickly to dispose of the body. Sakamoto's wife, noticing some commotion in the distance, asked if anyone had heard anything unusual. Meanwhile, Shin and Lu discreetly transported the assassin's body to a forest on the outskirts of the city. As they worked, Shin couldn't help but marvel at Sakamoto's skill, amazed at how he had taken down the Cleaner so efficiently, seemingly without even looking at him. Elsewhere, the long-haired man from the association, he recalled his earlier warnings about Sakamoto's unparalleled strength, which the Cleaner had foolishly ignored. Now, however, his thoughts shifted to Shin, recognizing the potential threat posed by his ability to read thoughts from a distance. Determined to assess their capabilities further, the long-haired man resolved to test his luck against them. As Shin and Lu returned to the amusement park, Shin felt an unsettling presence nearby, but couldn't pinpoint its source. Unbeknownst to him, an unknown figure passed silently behind him, blending into the crowd. Meanwhile, Sakamoto, despite feeling discomfort from his weight, joined his daughter on another ride, determined to keep her happy. Shin and Lu followed, boarding the last ride of the day together. Lu, noticing their seat choice, turned to Shin, curious and slightly puzzled. She asked why they had chosen that particular spot. The cheerful atmosphere of the park contrasted sharply with the lingering tension as both remained aware of unseen threats. Shin explained that their position was strategic, chosen to provide optimal protection for Sakamoto's family. Lu, unconvinced, pointed out a long-haired man in the area, saying she found him suspicious. Hearing her remark, the long-haired man thought to himself that she had correctly identified him. Shin, instantly picking up on the man's thoughts, realized he was the assassin they were searching for. He quickly informed Sakamoto, quietly pointing out the man to his left. Sakamoto glanced in the assassin's direction just as the man drew a concealed gun and fired. In an instant, Sakamoto deflected the bullet with a sharp, precise movement, leaving the assassin stunned. The assassin's disbelief turned to urgency as Shin sprang into action. He landed squarely on the assassin, dragging him from his seat. The two grappled in mid-air. The assassin, quick to counter, struck Shin mid-air, breaking free from his grip. The two fell, crashing onto the amusement ride's metal rails. The assassin taunted Shin, mocking his recklessness and declaring his intent to kill him. Shin, despite his battered state, retorted with unwavering confidence, pointing out that Sakamoto was on his day off and that the assassin had chosen the wrong place to start trouble. As the ride's train roared toward them on the rails, Shin leapt onto it to avoid being hit. The assassin followed in pursuit, jumping high into the air and hurling knives at Shin mid-flight. Shin dodged the first knife, but the second grazed him, cutting into his side and sending him tumbling to the ground. Exhausted and disoriented, Shin struggled to regain his focus. His vision blurred as the pain from the wound began to take its toll. Standing above him, the assassin sneered, mocking Shin for taking such a hard hit. He coldly remarked that Shin looked like he was on the verge of death, but admitted a grudging curiosity about his resilience. Defiant despite his condition, Shin replied that he wasn't dead yet and warned the assassin that killing him wouldn't be as easy as he thought. The assassin smirked, accusing Shin of living in denial. He compared Shin to Sakamoto, recounting the first time he had faced Sakamoto's unyielding gaze. He acknowledged that Shin's eyes carried a similar determination, but claimed they lacked true strength. According to the assassin, Shin's eyes bore the mark of a loser, someone clinging to life but too paralyzed by the fear of death to act decisively. The assassin elaborated further, asserting that anyone who stares death in the face reveals their fear over time. As people live longer, he explained, they become weighed down by the inevitability of death, paralyzed by its shadow. He pointed out Shin's failure to completely evade his knives as evidence of that fear, mocking him for his hesitation. Shin, unfazed by the assassin's taunts, shot back that he was the one who didn't understand anything. He called the assassin foolish and ignorant, declaring that Sakamoto Sakamoto wasn't like anyone else. Shin confidently stated that Sakamoto had no fear of death, not when his purpose was clear and unwavering. He explained that Sakamoto lived to protect his family, and it was that unshakable resolve that kept him alive and made him unstoppable in the face of any threat. The assassin sneered at Shin's words, claiming he saw no sign of the resolve Shin spoke of. Shin dismissed his mockery, stating that it didn't matter what the assassin perceived. He then calmly declared that there was only one viable way for the assassin to attack from their current position, subtly narrowing the assassin's options. As the amusement train approached again, Shin made a calculated short leap, momentarily confusing the assassin. Using the train's momentum, Shin positioned himself on a chair and launched a counterattack. However, the assassin managed to block his strikes with precision. Drawing a knife, the assassin launched a series of attacks. Shin dodged each strike with measured precision, his focus sharpening as he started analyzing the situation. Recalling earlier moments in their scuffle, he began piecing together the assassin's attack patterns. Seizing the opportunity, Shin grabbed hold of the assassin and leapt off the amusement train. The two plummeted into the middle of a stage performance below, their impact triggering a small explosion of pyrotechnics. One of the performers, startled and confused, asked the assassin who he was. Annoyed by the interruption, the assassin threatened to kill the performer if he didn't leave the stage. Before he could act, another performer, a large rabbit mascot, intervened, urging the frightened performer to step aside. The mascot then revealed itself to be Shin in disguise, standing ready to face the assassin. The assassin, unshaken, revealed a set of knives, declaring his intent to kill Shin. Before he could finish his threat, Shin didn't hesitate, landing a powerful punch that sent the assassin staggering backward. The audience, unaware of the deadly stakes, erupted in cheers and applause, believing the confrontation to be part of the stage act. The assassin quickly regained his footing and retaliated with a flurry of strikes, slashing at Shin with relentless speed. Yet Shin dodged each attack skillfully, his movements calculated and fluid. Spotting an opening, Shin capitalized with another solid punch, sending the assassin reeling once more. Meanwhile, Sakamoto's wife, sitting among the audience, turned to him and commented on how realistic and thrilling the show on stage was. She noted how quiet Sakamoto had become and told their daughter that her father must be deeply engrossed in the performance. In truth, Sakamoto was silently guiding Shin, subtly instructing him on how to evade the assassin's attacks and capitalize on openings. Following Sakamoto's precise advice, Shin dodged the incoming strikes with expert timing and delivered a powerful counterpunch that left the assassin reeling. The assassin, clearly shaken, admitted aloud that he couldn't anticipate Shin's unpredictable moves. Growing desperate, he lunged at Shin with a sharp strike, narrowly grazing him and tearing a small part of his outfit near his face. The tear revealed a shocking detail. Shin had been fighting with his eyes closed the entire time. The assassin froze in disbelief, stunned by the revelation. From his seat, Sakamoto watched intently, a faint smile crossing his lips. He quietly declared, "It's over." Shin, fueled by Sakamoto's unwavering confidence and his own determination, moved decisively. With one final devastating punch, he struck the assassin, knocking him out cold and ending the fight. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, convinced they had just witnessed an incredible stage performance. Cheers and whistles filled the air as the show reached its dramatic conclusion. Sakamoto gave a subtle nod and a small gesture of acknowledgement towards Shin, signaling his approval. Shin, catching the gesture, responded in kind.
Lu, visibly frightened, frantically searched for Shin amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, two new assassins arrived on the scene, targeting Sakamoto. One of them, a woman named Agbora, grumbled about working in crowded places. Her partner, calm and methodical, reminded her of the mission's importance and cautioned her not to harm anyone unnecessarily, emphasizing that their sole target was Sakamoto. Elsewhere, Lu tended to Shin, treating his eyes with an antidote to counteract the toxins that had affected him during the earlier fight. Shin winced in pain as the antidote took effect. Lu commented that it was fortunate they had access to the remedy, while the captured assassin smugly remarked that he always carried such antidotes as a precaution. Sakamoto, direct as ever, asked the assassin who had sent him to kill him. The assassin hesitated, asking if Sakamoto would spare him if he revealed the truth. Before he could say more, Lu intervened, suspiciously asking if the knives he used were poisoned. The assassin admitted they were. Without hesitation, Lu lightly stabbed him with one of his own blades and dropped the antidote on the ground, threatening to spill it unless he cooperated. Shin, still recovering, reminded Lu that he wasn't fully healed yet, but her tactic worked. Under pressure, the assassin confessed that he had been hired by a shadowy company called Dongani. He explained that the company regularly dispatched assassins on solo missions, abandoning them once the task was complete. Cynically, he added, "Everything after death is toxic too." Shin, glaring, pointed out the irony of the assassin mocking them earlier while now clinging to life under Lu's threats. The assassin admitted he had no loyalty to Dongani and only wanted to survive. Curious, Shin asked if he was registered with GIA. The assassin confirmed. Lu, puzzled, asked Shin what GIA was. Shin pulled out a small identification card, explaining that the Global Assassins Association, GIA, was an international organization that regulated professional assassins. He added that both he and Sakamoto were former members of the organization. Lu examined the card, remarking that it looked no different from a driver's license. Shin smirked and explained that obtaining a GIA license was far more difficult than getting a driver's license. The assassin then turned to Sakamoto and hesitantly asked if the rumors about him being a legend within the organization were true. Sakamoto didn't respond, maintaining his usual stoic silence. At that moment, Sakamoto's wife and daughter arrived. His wife, noticing the tied-up assassin, asked why they had restrained him. Thinking quickly, Shin explained that the assassin was practicing an escape act as part of the amusement park show, and that they were helping him rehearse. Sakamoto's daughter, delighted, announced that lunch was ready and eagerly urged everyone to join her. The group departed, leaving the assassin behind. Before they left, Sakamoto's daughter ran back and placed a bandage on the assassin's hand, complimenting him on his performance in the show. The assassin, caught off guard by her kindness, muttered a quiet thank you. Once alone, he used a hidden knife to cut himself free, muttering to himself about biding his time and trying again later. As they walked away, Shin admitted that the antidote's side effects were taking a toll on him. He revealed that his ability to read thoughts had been temporarily disabled, leaving them vulnerable for the rest of the day. Annoyed, Lu scolded him, pointing out that without his skill, the group was at greater risk. She added that the pressure on all of them was now higher than ever. Shin apologized to Sakamoto, expressing regret that he couldn't finish the day as effectively as he wanted. Just then, Sakamoto's wife and daughter rejoined the group. His wife, noticing their uneasy behavior, asked why they were acting so strangely. Sensing their nervousness, she pressed further, asking if they were hiding something from her. The trio froze, feeling the weight of her scrutiny and struggling to come up with a believable response. In a dimly lit bathroom, Batso nervously washed his hands, his mind racing. Suddenly, the assassin Bolid appeared behind him, cryptically stating that he was there to deal with what's troubling him. Before Batso could respond, Agbora stormed in and immediately attacked him, throwing him to the ground. Standing over him, she demanded to know where he thought he was running off to. Batso pleaded with her to back off, complaining that she was suffocating him. Ignoring his protests, Agbora scolded him further, her tone sharp and relentless. However, Bolid, clearly irritated, snapped at her, telling her to sit properly and reminding her that as a woman, she shouldn't sit so carelessly. Agbora, visibly annoyed, adjusted her posture but maintained her stern demeanor. Batso asked the two why they had come. Bolid replied coldly that they were there to finish the job Batso had failed to complete. Agbora added that if Batso didn't handle his tasks properly, the organization wouldn't hesitate to eliminate him. She then mentioned her excitement about meeting Sakamoto, admitting she had been looking forward to the opportunity to face him. Bolid, meanwhile, revealed that Sakamoto would likely recognize him because of a scar on his face. Curious, Agbora asked if the scar was Sakamoto's doing. Bolid sheepishly denied it, admitting that he had tripped and injured himself a few days earlier. This prompted Agbora to mock him, and the two began bickering. Batso, watching from the floor, could only stare in disbelief at the absurdity of their argument. Despite their antics, he acknowledged their lethal capabilities, recalling how the two had single-handedly killed 100 men in the past. Meanwhile, Shin continued reassuring Sakamoto's wife that everything was fine. When she asked if the food had been insufficient, Shin quickly denied it, praising the meal as excellent. Sakamoto's daughter then asked if they didn't like the amusement park, to which Lu replied cheerfully, reassuring her that they were excited for the next ride. The group moved on, with Shin and Lu remaining vigilant while keeping the family safe. At a popcorn stand, Shin informed Sakamoto that there were no assassins nearby and that the situation seemed under control. However, Sakamoto remarked that such peaceful settings weren't ideal for killers, hinting at his unease. When they arrived at the next attraction, they realized it was a haunted house. Shin's face turned pale, muttering that it was the perfect setting for an ambush. The group cautiously entered, their guard raised. Inside, the haunted house's staged ghosts and ghouls jumped out to scare visitors. Shin noted how happy Sakamoto's wife and daughter seemed, commenting on their genuine enjoyment of the attraction. Sakamoto, however, told Shin to stay alert. Moments later, an assassin emerged from the shadows and attempted to attack Shin from behind but failed. Turning his focus to Sakamoto, the assassin lunged, only to be met with a flurry of rapid and precise blows that left him immobilized. Throughout the fight, Sakamoto maintained the facade of being scared by the haunted house's monsters, keeping his wife and daughter oblivious to the danger. Shin, impressed, remarked on how seamlessly Sakamoto managed to fight while pretending to be frightened. Sakamoto handed the assassin's identification card to Shin, who examined it and discovered that the attacker was a newly registered first-class assassin. Shin scoffed, commenting that if this was the level of assassin being sent after them, they had little to worry about. Ever cautious, Sakamoto reminded Shin to remain prepared for anything. Elsewhere, Bolid and Agbora monitored the group through the haunted house's surveillance cameras. Agbora remarked on Sakamoto's impressive skill, expressing amazement at his agility despite his weight. She admitted she couldn't wait to face him in person. Annoyed by Bolid's constant fidgeting, she told him to stop making noise and to quit his habit of exercising when stressed. Bolid retorted that he wasn't stressed, but eager to show off his skills to Sakamoto. Agbora reassured him with a teasing tone, saying she'd leave Sakamoto to him when the time came, jokingly calling them friends. This infuriated Bolid, who shattered a bottle in anger before taking a swig of his drink. He yelled that they had never been friends and never would be, his frustration reigniting memories of his first encounter with Sakamoto. He recounted the time he had been a companion to one of the trainees Sakamoto had easily defeated during their training. Bolid vividly remembered watching Sakamoto practice with his gun, marveling at his precision and control. At the time, he had even complimented Sakamoto, calling him impressive. Despite Sakamoto's skill, Bolid's feelings toward him grew more complicated over time. One memory stood out sharply: Valentine's Day. On that day, Bolid had told Sakamoto that assassins weren't meant to love, as their hearts were too cold for such sentiments. Just as he had spoken, a young woman approached Sakamoto with a Valentine's gift, boldly asking if he would be her date for the day. The moment became even more humiliating for Bolid when Sakamoto opened his locker and an avalanche of gifts spilled out, a testament to his popularity. Another assassin entered the room, curious about the commotion, and asked Sakamoto who Bolid was. Sakamoto, in his typically aloof manner, simply replied, "I don't know him," brushing Bolid off completely. Humiliated and angry, Bolid stormed out, bitterness festering within him. Recounting this memory to Agbora, Bolid admitted that Sakamoto was never truly cold-hearted, unlike himself. Agbora, intrigued, asked if this was the root of their tension and suggested that Bolid now had a chance to settle the score. However, Bolid dismissed her suggestion, shouting angrily that he didn't care anymore. Meanwhile, inside the haunted house, Lu expressed her exhaustion and voiced a desire to go home. However, Sakamoto's daughter, full of excitement, pointed out the zombies and begged to see more of the attraction. Shin, amused, teased Lu, claiming that Sakamoto's daughter had more courage than she did. In response, Lu pulled out a bottle and began drinking. Curious, Shin asked what it was. Lu revealed it was her family's favorite drink before tossing the bottle at Shin. Catching it, Shin sniffed the contents and recoiled in disgust when he realized it was alcohol, promptly throwing it away. As they ventured deeper into the haunted house, they came across a shaking door with eerie noises emanating from behind it. Ignoring Shin's warning, Lu opened the door, unleashing a chaotic horde of zombie sand hidden assassins. In the ensuing chaos, Bolid emerged from the shadows and lunged at Sakamoto. The force of the attack sent both of them crashing to the upper floor. As they fought, Sakamoto flung a character ID card at Bolid mid-scuffle, but Bolid dodged it effortlessly. "Do you remember me now?" Bolid demanded, his voice filled with irritation. Sakamoto, as calm as ever, replied flatly. "Number." Annoyed, Bolid growled, threatening Sakamoto and vowing to destroy him. Unfazed, Sakamoto asked, "What about your family?" Bolid, glaring, retorted sarcastically, "Go figure it out yourself. I'm not your mother." Elsewhere, Shin was frantically searching for Sakamoto's wife and daughter. He eventually found them unconscious in a nearby room. Before he could act, Agbora appeared with a group of assassins, her smirk radiating confidence. "You're the key part of this mission," she taunted Shin. Before Shin could respond, Lu charged in, delivering a powerful punch to Agbora's face. The impact sent Agbora flying, blood spraying as she crashed into the wall. Lu stood firmly, her stance exuding confidence. "I'll show you the strength I inherited from my family," she declared. Agbora, recovering from the punch, wiped the blood from her mouth and smirked. "Impressive," she admitted. "You've got some serious strength. Gives me chills." Back on the upper floor, Bolid once again demanded, "Do you remember me yet?" Sakamoto, undeterred, repeated his earlier answer. "Number." Pressing further, Sakamoto inquired about Bolid's family again, only for Bolid to snap. "Go figure it out yourself. I'm not your mother." Sakamoto launched an attack on Bolid, but Bolid countered by tossing a small bomb at him. The explosion caused little damage to Sakamoto, who retaliated with a powerful strike. However, Bolid dodged skillfully and threw a cluster of colored pellets, triggering a series of controlled explosions that surrounded Sakamoto in chaos. Using the distraction to his advantage, Bolid managed to land a heavy punch on Sakamoto. Meanwhile, Agbora, observing the fight from her vantage point, smirked and announced to her group, "The party has started." She blocked a punch from Lu with ease, grabbing her hand and acknowledging her impressive strength. However, Agbora confidently claimed that Lu wasn't stronger than her. Seizing control of the fight, she grabbed Lu by the head and violently shook her until she collapsed unconscious on the floor. Turning her attention to Shin, Agbora taunted him, saying it was now his turn to demonstrate his supposed strength. Two assassins restrained Shin, pinning him to a metal frame as one of them brought out a chainsaw. Agbora mocked Shin further, claiming that his strength only appeared when he was angry. She threatened Lu, saying she would strike her every 10 seconds, and if Lu failed to respond, she would begin cutting Shin apart with the chainsaw. Lu, tears streaming down her face, began apologizing to Shin, admitting her helplessness in the situation. Trying to diffuse the tension, Shin gave her a weak smile and muttered that she was clearly still drunk from all the alcohol she'd consumed earlier. Elsewhere, Bolid and Sakamoto continued their heated confrontation. Bolid sneered, reminding Sakamoto that he had retired 5 years ago. He claimed that Sakamoto's inability to match his attacks proved that their abilities had diverged drastically over the years. Bolid's tone shifted to disappointment as he expressed how sad it was to see someone he had once idolized reduced to such a state. Sakamoto attempted another punch, but Bolid countered with an explosive pellet that sent him reeling. Bolid began boasting about his advanced weaponry, explosive pellets, and rocket punches that he had refined over the years. He nostalgically recalled the days when he first introduced these innovations to their team. Fueled by his growing anger, Bolid unleashed a flurry of strikes, accusing Sakamoto of being weaker than he used to be. With a final devastating kick, Bolid sent Sakamoto crashing into the far wall of the room. As Sakamoto slammed into the wall, Bolid lit a cigarette and sneered triumphantly, "Sweet dreams, Sakamoto." Just as he began to revel in his apparent victory, he heard a voice cut through the silence. Calm yet menacing, Sakamoto's words echoed, "Farewell to the days of your adolescence with me." Sakamoto slowly rose, his gaze sharp and focused. He began analyzing and explaining the chemical components of Bolid's bombs, revealing his intimate knowledge of the weapon's designs and weaknesses. His calm tone unsettled Bolid, who took a step back. With determination gleaming in his eyes, Sakamoto declared, "Now, I'll show you what I'm truly capable of." Lo endured Agbora's relentless blows, standing her ground despite the pain. However, a sudden powerful kick from Agbora sent Lo stumbling backward. Breathing heavily, Lo admitted she was getting tired. Meanwhile, Shin, restrained and helpless, recalled Agbora's chilling words. If he struck her every 10 seconds, he could save his friend from death. Hearing this, Shin's heart sank, fear gripping him as he whispered to himself that it was all over. Agbora launched another kick at Lo, but this time Lo swiftly dodged and retaliated, striking Agbora with her hair. With a sly grin, Lo remarked on her luck. From his restrained position, Shin shouted at Lo to take the fight seriously, his frustration growing. Agbora responded with a vicious kick, hitting Lo hard and declaring it was her turn now the time for games was over. But before she could press her advantage, she heard Lo laughing behind her and turned in surprise. Lo taunted Shin, pointing out how he trembled while calling her name. Then, in an unexpected move, she pulled out a bottle and took a swig of alcohol mid-fight. Agbora, enraged, threw a flurry of punches, but Lo dodged them effortlessly. Attempting to regain control, Agbora tried to grab Lo's clothes, but Lo slipped free, kissed Agbora's hand mockingly, and delivered a powerful blow that sent Agbora stumbling backward. Laughing maniacally, Agbora urged Lo to kill her, claiming she loved the thrill, but Lo calmly replied that killing went against her family's code. Confused, Agbora questioned what family promises meant. Lo explained that these promises were sacred to her and her family, which included Shin, the director, his wife, and daughter. Agbora scoffed, insisting that the Sakamoto family only had 3 members, and lashed out with a powerful blow. Lo blocked it effortlessly. Anger flashed across Lo's face as she repeated Agbora's insult, calling her a fool. She told Agbora that since arriving in Japan, she had learned so much, only to be dismissed as a fool now. With renewed strength, Lo shoved Agbora back and aimed a punch at her, but instead of striking, she gently placed her hands on Agbora's face, leaving her stunned. The entire room fell silent in shock. Suddenly, Lo's demeanor shifted. She blinked, confused, and asked aloud why she was there, who this Lady Yasen was, and why Shin was tied up like that. Shin, frustrated and angry, muttered that she had woken up at the worst possible time. Agbora, amused, accused Lo of mocking her but dismissed it with a smile. Then, surprising everyone, Agbora declared her love for strong warriors like Lo and hugged her tightly. Seeing this, Shin relaxed, turning to Agbora's men and declaring he was safe now. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Sakamoto explained the components of the explosives he had crafted to Walid. Walid, unimpressed, remarked that Sakamoto would become stronger once he lost weight, and if he really wanted to fight, they should get moving to save his family. But Sakamoto calmly replied that his family didn't need saving, he trusted them completely. Before Walid could respond, Sakamoto delivered a sudden punch to his face with such force that it destroyed part of the building. Without missing a beat, Sakamoto followed up with a powerful kick and a barrage of rapid punches. Walid retaliated, using his weapon to aim a punch at Sakamoto, but Sakamoto struck back simultaneously, shattering Walid's weapon completely. Sakamoto then unleashed a series of lightning-fast punches, overwhelming Walid. Desperate, Walid threw his explosive balls at Sakamoto, but Sakamoto caught them mid-air before they could detonate. In a brutal twist, he used the explosives as weapons, punching Walid with them and inflicting excruciating pain. Sakamoto, towering over Walid, asked how he had managed to gain such strength. Looking down at his defeated opponent, Sakamoto told Walid that while he was once like him using his power to hurt others, she now fought to protect his beloved family. With that, he delivered one final crushing punch. Two people were enjoying the rides at the amusement park when they were suddenly startled by two figures flying toward them. The scene then shifted to Sakamoto and Walid, seated across from each other in a ride cart. Walid, blood dripping from his mouth, admitted he hadn't given Sakamoto enough credit, acknowledging his toughness. Meanwhile, Sakamoto's wife woke up to find Shin and Lo sleeping nearby. She nudged Shin awake, asking what had brought him there, and mentioned that the last place she remembered being was the haunted house. Confused, she asked how they ended up here. Shin explained that he thought they had lost consciousness in the haunted house. When she asked about Sakamoto, Shin admitted he didn't know where he was, but quickly promised to find him before dashing off. Back at the amusement park, Sakamoto and Walid had just reached the ground as their ride cart arrived at the station. As they exited, an employee approached them, asking what had happened. Walid dismissed the question, telling her not to worry about how Sakamoto got hurt. The employee clarified she wasn't referring to that, but to the damage done to the cart, insisting they would need to pay for repairs. Walid turned to Sakamoto, conceding defeat and saying he would leave him alone now. Unfazed, Sakamoto ordered 5 meat sandwiches from a nearby restaurant. Despite his earlier admission, Walid commented that he still didn't care about anything Sakamoto had said. While Sakamoto was eating, Walid asked for a bite. Without hesitation, Sakamoto handed him the half-eaten sandwich. Walid, taking the sandwich, joked that even Sakamoto's leftovers were an honor to him. Sakamoto, in his typical calm manner, replied that his leftovers were usually reserved for his family. Just then, Shin arrived, surprised to see Sakamoto, and even more shocked by how much weight he had lost. Excited, Shin pulled out his phone and started taking photos. Walid then asked Sakamoto what he planned to do about the gang offering a reward for his assassination. Before Sakamoto could respond, his wife appeared, having overheard the word reward. Her face darkened with anger as she demanded to know what reward they were talking about. Lo quickly tried to distract her, suggesting Hana go finish playing the games, but Hana pointed at some candy and insisted she wanted 2 pieces. At that moment, Agbora approached Hana, commenting that she was spoiled but had great potential. Sakamoto's wife, growing more suspicious, pressed for answers. Sakamoto calmly admitted that there was a bounty on his head and people were trying to kill him. Furious, his wife asked why he hadn't told her sooner. Walid, still munching on a sandwich, interjected, saying Sakamoto probably didn't want her to worry so she could enjoy the amusement park with their daughter. Turning her attention to Walid, she demanded to know who he was. Walid introduced himself as a professional killer. This only fueled her anger as she warned him not to harm her husband. She then turned back to Sakamoto, frustrated that he hadn't confided in her, even though he knew she would eventually find out. Sakamoto tried to explain that he didn't want her to worry, but his wife wasn't having it. "Did you forget our rules?" she snapped, pulling out a book and flipping to a page. She pointed at rule number 6, no secrets between family members. Sakamoto was taken aback, clearly surprised by the book. His wife then told him to share everything from now on. Sakamoto nodded, agreeing without argument. With the issue seemingly resolved, Sakamoto's wife suggested they go watch the show. Walid, still impressed, remarked that Sakamoto's wife was tough too. The scene then shifted to the show, where Shin leaned towards Sakamoto. Shin asked Sakamoto how they could solve their current predicament. Sakamoto, ever pragmatic, explained that the only way to cancel the contract on his life was to eliminate the presenter who had submitted it to the gang. But first, they needed to figure out who the presenter was. Agbora chimed in, mentioning that the reward had been issued through Jihai, making it difficult to trace the presenter. Bolid added that he might be able to get more information from his boss. Shin, never one to mince words, told Bolid to grab a phone and call his boss to find out. Bolid, annoyed, asked why he should bother. Shin shot back, saying, "Because you're useless otherwise." Bolid grumbled about how Shin always demanded too much from people, then reluctantly agreed, saying he would go and that Agbora would come with him. Before they set out, Shin asked if they had figured out where Donkawi was yet. Sakamoto, confident as ever, said he knew someone who could lead them to him. On the way to meet the informant, Shin's irritation became apparent. Lu, noticing his mood, asked if he was in pain. Shin scoffed and replied, "No, I just don't get how Sakamoto gained all that weight back so fast." They continued walking until they reached their destination, a quirky office filled with old movies. Shin, confused, asked what kind of place this was. Sakamoto explained that this was an information hub where intel was sold in the form of movies. He pointed them toward the screening room. Inside the screening room, they watched footage revealing Donkawi's presentations. Shin took mental notes of the layout, while Lu, unexpectedly emotional, felt a wave of sadness after the film ended. They exited the room, and Sakamoto went to pay the bill, which turned out to be quite hefty. Shin, surprised, asked how Sakamoto planned to afford it. Sakamoto casually replied that he had saved plenty plenty from his past work. As they prepared to leave, the library employee warned Sakamoto to be careful, hinting that someone from his own team might be behind the bounty. When Sakamoto pressed for more details, the employee shrugged, saying there was no additional information or movies about it. Meanwhile, Nagumo was at a business lunch with several shady figures. When asked about Sakamoto, Nagumo claimed he hadn't seen him in a long time. A man with yellow hair, Shishi, warned another man named Hayo not to interfere, saying Sakamoto could appear at any moment. Hayo, skeptical, said it didn't matter and expressed doubts about Nagumo's loyalty before suddenly lunging at him with a knife. Nagumo blocked the strike with a fork and smirked, telling him to save the violence for dinner. The man with the yellow hair said to Sarawaji that he thought this wasn't their fight. Sarawaji, nonchalant, replied that Shishi hadn't even eaten his food yet. Shishi called the chef over and, upon the chef's arrival, slammed his head onto the table, stabbing his hands with a knife for including onions in his dish. At that moment, Mr. Irei entered, greeting the group and introducing himself as a representative from GGI. He praised their gathering, but Hayo pointed out that they weren't finished yet. Only 4 of them were present. Shishi noted that 3 others hadn't shown up, including Takamura, who was usually punctual. Nagumo suggested that Takamura might be busy, but Shishi doubted it, suspecting he had simply forgotten. Irei then presented a photo, explaining that someone from GGI had been wandering around, and they needed to handle this matter swiftly. Back with Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu, they arrived at Donkoi's building. Sakamoto instructed them to avoid killing, emphasizing that this would be a covert operation. They suited up in their infiltration gear and entered the building, where 2 guards were patrolling the hallway. Shin quickly tossed a rope around the first guard, making him disappear from sight, while Sakamoto incapacitated the second guard with a swift strike. After neutralizing the threats, they removed their disguises. Lu asked about the location of the leader's office. Shin, exasperated, asked, "Didn't you pay attention to the expensive film we just watched?" He explained that the leader's office was on the upper floor and that they'd need to jump from an adjacent window to access it. When Shin turned to Sakamoto for confirmation, Sakamoto sheepishly admitted, "I was sleeping through the movie." In another part of the building, a guard was washing his hands when he heard a suspicious noise. He drew his gun and opened the window cautiously, only to find Sakamoto pointing a gun directly at his head from above. Before the guard could react, Sakamoto shocked him with a taser. They entered the room, and Lu quickly tied the guard up with a rope, grinning as she remarked, "I'm really enjoying playing spy." They made their way to the leader's room, with Shin whispering to Sakamoto that he couldn't hear any thoughts from anyone in the vicinity. This silence unsettled him, leading him to believe the place was completely empty. As they entered the room, they were met with a grisly sight. Numerous guards laid dead on the ground. In the center of the room, sitting calmly in a chair, was Nagumo. Nagumo looked up and smirked at Sakamoto. "Caught me red-handed, huh?" he quipped. Shin, still processing the scene, asked Nagumo what he was doing there. With an eerie calm, Nagumo replied that the upper management employees had been killed by him. He then turned to Sakamoto and, with a chilling smile, announced that Sakamoto had to die too. Suddenly, Nagumo produced a knife and vanished from sight, reappearing behind Shin in a flash. He drove the knife into Shin's neck. Shin instinctively grabbed his neck, expecting to feel the warm flow of blood, but there was nothing. Confused, he found no wound. Nagumo burst into laughter, revealing that the knife was a fake, it was all a joke. Infuriated, Shin and Lu launched a series of strikes at Nagumo, who continued to laugh, explaining that he hadn't killed anyone there. He claimed he had arrived to find all the guards already dead, and that he was there on a different mission. Sakamoto, his patience wearing thin, asked Nagumo what had really brought him there. Nagumo's tone shifted, becoming more serious. He explained that he was looking for something specific. Many professional killers had been murdered recently, and he believed there was a connection. Shin, skeptical, asked what was unusual about that after all. Killers getting killed wasn't exactly rare. Nagumo clarified that these deaths weren't the result of typical fights. Over 100 fighters from organizations tied to GGI had been slaughtered in a brutal, calculated manner. He suspected the killings were a message to GGI. Shin's eyes widened. "That's a quarter of the professional killers," he muttered. Nagumo nodded grimly. He added that after each massacre, an X mark was left on the wall, a signature from whoever was behind the killings. Sakamoto asked if these killings were tied to any specific request. Lu, confused, asked what request he meant. Nagumo explained that in GGI, he was considered one of the top assassins. Their organization handled dangerous killers, overseeing operations and maintaining a system within the assassin world. Sakamoto, he revealed, was among those recently targeted, and he warned him to be wary of the X. Shin interjected, insisting they weren't killers anymore. Lu agreed, reminding them they were only investigating the bounty on Sakamoto's head. Nagumo shrugged, admitting he didn't know much about the bounty itself, but he pointed out that the killings coincided with the announcement of the reward for Sakamoto's death. The scene shifted to a mysterious figure drawing an X on a wall after slaughtering another group of killers, further cementing the threat's presence. Back at Sakamoto's store, Shin sighed, frustrated. "After all this, we're back to square one," he muttered. As they entered, they were met by a man wielding a knife. demanding to know where Sakamoto was. Without hesitation, Lu taught Hana to press a hidden button behind the counter. With a loud clatter, a stash of weapons dropped from the ceiling, landing squarely on the intruder's head and knocking him out cold. Sakamoto reflected on Nagumo's warning. If he was only as strong as Bolid, he was as good as finished. Determined, he announced that since they didn't know who was behind the killings, they needed to prepare. They would train relentlessly to defend themselves against any future attacks. Later, another man entered the store, seemingly just another customer. But before he could speak, Lu, still on high alert, smashed a bottle over his head, sending him to the floor with a knife falling from his pocket and blood trickling from his scalp. The assassin muttered to himself about the cost of feeding his pet bird, lamenting that it took 10,000 a month just for food. If he ate sparingly, he could make it to 20,000, but he wouldn't be able to survive the rest of the month like that. He convinced himself that all his problems would be solved if he killed Sakamoto once he got the billion-dollar reward. He would finally be able to improve his life completely. Back at the store, Shin sighed as he swept broken glass from the floor. Frustrated, he remarked that he had been cleaning up way too often lately because of all the assassins barging in. Lu added that the store itself had also taken quite a bit of damage from all the fights. Sakamoto, ever practical, stated that they needed to repair everything. Shin, however, reminded him that they didn't have enough money to cover all the expenses. That's when Shin proposed entering a competition where they could win money to fund the repairs. Just as they were discussing the idea, an assassin entered the store and bluntly asked for Sakamoto. He claimed he would leave them alone if they simply told him where Sakamoto was. He then turned to Sakamoto himself, mocking him by calling him fat. Unfazed, Sakamoto coolly responded that he had no idea who that was. The assassin, confused, pointed out that the store's name outside literally said Sakamoto. Sakamoto shrugged and told him that plenty of stores shared that name. The assassin, visibly frustrated, slumped in disappointment. Then how am I supposed to find him? He groaned. Shin, reading the assassin's thoughts, found them completely trivial. His mind was almost entirely preoccupied with food. The assassin then mentioned that he had asked an elderly woman outside, and she had told him that this was Sakamoto's store and that Sakamoto himself was inside. Growing impatient, Shin, now visibly irritated, insisted that no one named Sakamoto was there. He then exaggerated, claiming there were over 200 million stores named Sakamoto worldwide. The assassin's eyes widened in disbelief. 200 million, he muttered in despair before breaking down, lamenting that he didn't have the money to travel to all of them. His frustration soon turned into sorrow as he admitted he couldn't even afford breakfast. His stomach growled, and his eyes welled with tears as he stood outside the store, watching them through the window while crying profusely. Moved by his pathetic state, Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu gave him some food. Overjoyed, the assassin thanked them profusely before setting off once again on his quest to find Sakamoto. As he left, the three waved him off, telling him he was welcome to return anytime. Shin turned to Sakamoto with a sigh. I didn't think assassins this dumb actually existed. Sakamoto replied, there are plenty of them, and they never stop being dumb. Elsewhere, the assassin set up a tent, preparing to live in it for the time being. He fondly mentioned that it was a gift from his grandmother, and that it would serve him well for a few days at least until he became rich. As he settled in, he was briefly lost in thought, remembering the time when he was in the Assassin's Guild. He recalled the humiliation of being deemed unfit to become a high-ranking assassin and being rejected. Shaking off the painful memory, he clenched his fists and declared that he would prove them all wrong. They would regret ever doubting him. Just then, a strong gust of wind blew through the area, ripping his tent from the ground. He frantically tried to catch it, but it was swept away before he could do anything. As he mourned the loss of his only shelter, a stray piece of paper smacked him in the face. Peeling it off, he read the words printed on it. Competition. Grand prize. 1 million. His eyes lit up with excitement. With that amount of money, he could buy a house. Meanwhile, Shin and Sakamoto arrived at the competition venue. Shin looked around in awe, impressed by how grand the event looked. They went to collect their communication devices, which would allow them to stay in touch during the competition. As Shin tested one out, he commented on how cool the devices were. Just then, Lu arrived to cheer for Sakamoto. Shin approached her, asking why she hadn't signed up to participate. Lu scoffed, crossing her arms. Why would I waste my time on a stupid competition? Shin, exasperated, reminded her that they needed money to fix the store. Before she could respond, a loud commotion erupted nearby. Turning their heads, they saw the assassin from earlier entering the competition grounds, this time with his pet bird perched on his shoulder. A competition staff member stopped him, informing him that he wasn't allowed to participate. The assassin, desperate, pleaded with her. Please, I need the money. His face scrunched up, and within seconds he broke into tears. The competition officials scowled at the assassin, informing him that participation was only allowed for teams of 2 to 5 members. Hearing this, the assassin's face fell into utter despair, realizing he couldn't compete alone. Just then, Lu called out to his pet bird, catching the assassin's attention. Instantly, he ran toward Shin, grabbing onto his leg and desperately begging for help. His dramatic pleas only irritated Shin, who sighed in frustration. Begrudgingly, Shin grabbed a sign-up sheet and angrily wrote Sakamoto and the assassins' names together as a team. With the team now officially registered, the competition host greeted all the participants, explaining the rules. It was a paintball-style shooting game held in the main street, and at the end of the event, all participants would have to help clean up the area. Shin, amused, remarked, "That sounds fun." Sakamoto, however, dryly noted, "We're basically just cleaning the neighborhood for free after this." Now officially teammates, Shin, Sakamoto, and the assassin gathered to strategize. The assassin, still unsure, asked, "What do we do now?" Shin sighed and instructed him, "Shoot every except us. We're on the same team." Without hesitation, the assassin unleashed a barrage of shots, eliminating the first 4 opponents in an instant. Shin stared in shock. Wait, how did he do that? He's actually skilled? Before he could process it, an opponent fired at Shin from behind. He quickly dodged and fired back, eliminating 2 more competitors. Meanwhile, 2 contestants tried to ambush Sakamoto from behind, but Sakamoto swiftly grabbed one of their paintball guns and fired at both of them simultaneously, taking them out. As the battle continued, Sakamoto started mentally listing what he would buy with the prize money bulletproof glass and additional shelves for instant noodles. The assassin, exhilarated, exclaimed, "I have teammates now, this is awesome." Shin rolled his eyes. "You really think we're friends now?" The assassin, grinning, replied, "You guys are pros. Let's keep going." He then volunteered to act as bait to lure out more enemies. As he ran off, Liu shouted from the sidelines, "Go, Sakamoto! Take them all down! You can do it!" Hearing Liu's encouragement, the assassin abruptly stopped in his tracks. He turned back to look at her. "Wait, you know Sakamoto?" He then pulled out a photo and compared it to Sakamoto. "This picture looks nothing like him." Liu approached him and casually pointed out, "That's because this was him when he was thinner. Look at the glasses. Look at the hair." Shin, realizing the danger, immediately yanked Liu away before the assassin could put the pieces together. The assassin burst into laughter. "There's no way! This guy isn't the Sakamoto I'm after!" He then casually tossed the photo onto the ground, but in the next instant, he raised his gun, aiming directly at Sakamoto. His cheerful expression vanished. "I don't like being lied to." Both men stood at a standoff, their weapons aimed at each other. Before either could shoot, a group of competitors suddenly ambushed them, firing from all directions. The shots forced them to scatter. Shin quickly took cover and returned fire, eliminating several opponents. Sakamoto did the same, neutralizing the threats around him. Meanwhile, the assassin whistled for his pet bird, which swooped down and dropped a weapon into his hands. Now armed with a more powerful gun, he took aim at Sakamoto and fired. Sakamoto instinctively blocked the shot with his hand, but the impact left a wound. He glanced at his injury but remained composed. The assassin smirked. "I'll reposition for a better shot." Without hesitation, he sprinted away. Shin, furious, tried to chase after him, but Sakamoto stopped him. "We need to handle this carefully," he warned. "He's a sniper. If you rush in blindly, you'll get shot." Carefully, Sakamoto stepped out from a passageway. A gunshot rang out. A bullet struck a glass sign above him, shattering it. The shot also ripped through Sakamoto's shirt, but he dodged the bullet at the last second. From his hidden position, the assassin cursed in frustration. He dodged again. Then, over the competition's communication device, his voice rang out, "You dodged that shot too, huh?" Shin dismissed the sniper's shot as nothing more than a random ricochet. However, Sakamoto quickly corrected him, stating that it wasn't random at all. He explained that the bullet that grazed him had spun in an unusual manner, leading him to believe that it was specifically designed for controlled rebounds. The sniper, a seasoned assassin, confirmed Sakamoto's suspicion. He proudly explained that the bullet was a triple-dimension ricochet round, designed so that no one could track its trajectory or predict its rebound. Shin, unimpressed, called out the sniper, asking, "So after telling us we were friends, you still want to kill us?" The assassin scoffed at the question. "Don't be naive. We're assassins first, before we're friends," he replied coldly. He then explained that once he set his sights through his scope, there was only one thought in his mind hitting his target. Without hesitation, he fired 3 rounds at them. Sakamoto and Shin sprinted for cover as the bullets ricocheted unpredictably, one nearly hitting Sakamoto's face. They continued evading the shots as bullets came from multiple angles, each expertly placed. Eventually, they managed to hide behind a staircase, momentarily escaping the assassin's line of sight. The sniper, now observing from his vantage point, acknowledged that they had fought well. As he reloaded, his mind drifted to the past back to his childhood. He remembered how he had struggled in races, failing to win. He recalled his training in combat, where he never managed to outmatch his opponents. He had been a failure at everything, unable to stand alongside his friends because he was simply not good enough. Except for one thing. The only thing he had ever been truly talented at was sniping. He had honed his skills until he could hit any target with precision. He then recalled the day he approached the major assassins guild, confidently declaring that he was the best sniper they would ever have. However, the guild's recruiter dismissed him immediately. "You only have one skill," the recruiter said flatly. "That's not enough. If you want to be an assassin, you need to learn more than just sniping." He emphasized that assassins didn't get to choose their tasks, they had to handle whatever mission was given to them. The sniper then recalled a humiliating moment from a gang fight where he had been given only a knife. He had been utterly useless, unable to fight in close combat. When he tried to escape, he tripped and fell, further cementing his failure. With no future as a field agent, he was relegated to meaningless desk jobs. Eventually, a senior assassin bluntly told him to quit, saying he wasn't cut out for assassination work. His pride shattered, he left the guild in disgrace. Soon after, he received a notification on his device a mission to kill Sakamoto. It was his chance, his only chance to prove himself. Back in the present, he steadied his aim and took another shot at Sakamoto and Shin. But once again, neither of them was hit. Shin smirked and spoke into his communicator. "Turn off your microphone." The assassin was startled. "I heard everything," Shin continued. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone but yourself." He then shouted, hoping to shake the sniper's confidence. The assassin, irritated, pulled off his earpiece. "You think yelling at me will shake my focus? It won't work," he muttered. At that moment, Sakamoto silently picked up a small rock from the ground. With incredible force, he hurled it at the sniper. The impact shattered the sniper's rifle completely, sending him tumbling to the ground. Stunned and disoriented, the sniper looked up in shock. I can't kill this man," he murmured. "He's far too strong." The event announcer's voice rang through the speakers, and the winners of the competition are Sakamoto's team. The crowd erupted in cheers as Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu claimed their grand prize. Afterward, they retreated to a quiet spot, where the sniper broke down into tears. "I'm useless. I can't even snipe properly anymore. I don't know how to kill." His voice trembled with frustration. Sakamoto stepped forward and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't say that," he said. "You're incredibly skilled. In fact, you're the best sniper I've ever seen." As they prepared to leave, Shin casually tossed a small portion of their winnings to the sniper. The assassin caught it and frowned. "Wait, is this really all I get?" Shin grinned. "Well, considering all the damage you caused to the city, this is about right." Sakamoto's wife greeted him at the entrance. "So, you won the grand prize," she said with a knowing smile, and then immediately spent most of it cleaning up the city. His wife simply laughed and told him, "The important thing is that you're okay." Shin, still curious, asked her, "So, how did you two even meet?" She paused for a moment before recalling their first encounter years ago at a small shop. She explained how Sakamoto had been a regular customer, and how, the moment he first saw her, he fell in love. Shin, intrigued, asked, "So what made you fall for him?" She smiled warmly and said, "He had the biggest, kindest heart I had ever seen." Shin, amused, muttered, "That's not the only thing that was big." Immediately, Sakamoto's gaze darkened. Without physically moving, he imagined stabbing Shin in the neck with a knife. Shin clutched his throat instinctively, eyes widening in horror as he heard Sakamoto's voice in his mind. "Stop reading my wife's thoughts." Sakamoto and his wife arrived at their daughter's school to take pictures of her in her classroom. As Sakamoto focused on capturing the moment, his wife Lei smiled and expressed her happiness about being there. She then mentioned that she had left the store under Shin and Lu's care and asked her husband, "Do you think they're doing okay?" Sakamoto, still taking pictures, casually replied, "I think so." Meanwhile, Shin and Lu were locked in a heated argument. Shin was annoyed and told Lu to stop wearing his work clothes from the store. Lu, unfazed, handed him a cloth and told him to clean the store windows instead. Shin grumbled that whenever no one else was around, he was the one stuck doing everything. Lu rolled her eyes, glanced to the side, and muttered to herself, "You sound like a child." Shin, furious, snapped, "I can hear you, you know. I hear everything you say." Lu folded her arms. "I have the right to say whatever I want, and stop reading my thoughts." At that moment, the assassin from the competition entered the store, casually asking if they had any pork. Lu shot a glare at Shin. "See? You read people's thoughts all the time. That's creepy." Shin, agitated, told her to shut up. "You're drunk half the time anyway. You don't even know what you're saying." Lu, enraged, threw a handful of pastries at him. "I don't like how you're always reading my mind. It makes me uncomfortable." Shin's face fell, his expression turning somber. Without another word, he stormed out of the store. The assassin, watching the scene unfold, scratched his head. "Aren't you going to stop him?" Lu remained silent. The assassin then glanced at the pastries on the floor. "So, are you going to eat those?" Lu glared at him and ordered him to leave the store immediately. As he walked through the city, Shin couldn't shake off Lu's words. He had never really considered how his abilities made people uncomfortable. Deep down, her words hurt more than he wanted to admit. At the same time, Lu sat inside the store, arms crossed. She muttered to herself, he should come back and apologize first. Before she could dwell on it further, a group of strangers entered the store. They looked at her clothes, which had Sakamoto's name on them, and immediately assumed she was Sakamoto. Without warning, they grabbed her and demanded she come with them. In the vehicle, the gang's leader, Tanaka, studied an old photograph of Shin. "He looks completely different from how he did 11 years ago," Tanaka muttered, noting that Shin's hair color had also changed. The driver, Seba, hesitated before speaking. "Boss, I think we kidnapped the wrong person." Tanaka's face darkened. "No, this is right." Seba, confused, asked, "Are you sure? That doesn't look like him." Tanaka, unfazed, explained, "Shin was raised in a laboratory. He was the only successful test subject in a project to develop mind-reading abilities. Out of all the experiments, he was the only one who survived." He then leaned back and scoffed. "Tell me, who would even want to live next to someone like that?" He smirked. "I doubt anyone actually loves or cares about him." Lu, furious, delivered a swift punch to Tanaka's face. "You're an idiot," she spat. "Yeah, Shin reads minds. Yeah, he's moody, but he's a million times better than you." Tanaka wiped the blood from his lip and narrowed his eyes. "Who even are you?" Lu glared at him. "The name's Lu." Tanaka was taken aback. "Wait, so you're not Shin?" The driver Seba sighed heavily. "I told you, boss. You should have listened. You kidnapped." After cooling off, Shin decided to return to the store, determined to make things right. As he walked inside, he called out to Lu. "All right, I'll let you apologize first. I'll forgive you too." But the store was empty. Shin's heart sank. The glass on the floor and the signs of struggle told him something was wrong. At that moment, Sakamoto and his family arrived. His wife immediately noticed the mess and asked, "What happened here?" Shin, his voice heavy with regret, explained everything. He admitted that it was his fault and that he had no idea where Lu was now. Sakamoto, calm but serious, checked his phone. "She's on the highway," he said. Shin's eyes widened. "Wait, how do you know that?" Sakamoto held up a tiny device. "The insignia on her shirt has a tracking device." Tanaka sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "This is exhausting. My boss is going to kill me for kidnapping the wrong person." He groaned in frustration before muttering to himself, "I just need to convince him that this really is Shin maybe. He just lost his mind, reading powers or something." Seba, the driver, shook his head. "Boss, that won't work. Shin is a man. This is clearly a woman." Meanwhile, Lu sat in the back of the car, bound and fuming. She scolded herself internally. "This is all my fault. I should have apologized to Shin instead of arguing. Now look where I am." Just then, a loud roaring engine broke through the silence. From behind, Sakamoto and Shin approached at high speed, riding a motorcycle. Sakamoto, calm as ever, simply stated, "We're here to get our pork cook back." Tanaka's eyes widened in realization. "That's the real Shin. I have to capture him." Shin, already anticipating their intentions, muttered, "They're from the lab. They want me back." Tanaka immediately commanded his crew, "Get him! Don't let him escape!" From all directions, motorcycle-riding gang members emerged, launching an all-out attack on Sakamoto and Shin. One of the gang members lunged at Sakamoto with a taser, but Sakamoto effortlessly dodged and slammed him into a wall, knocking him out instantly. Meanwhile, Shin jumped onto a moving truck carrying logs. He quickly asked the driver to release the cargo. With a nod, the driver pulled a lever and a flood of wooden planks scattered across the road. One of the pursuing gang members swerved too late, lost control, and crashed violently. Sakamoto, meanwhile, used his motorcycle as a weapon, swinging it midair to knock another attacker off his bike. Inside the getaway car, Lu turned to Tanaka. "You should just give up and apologize before things get worse." Tanaka smirked before grabbing Lu by the throat. "If I don't bring Shin back to the lab, things will get worse." Just then, Shin leaped onto the roof of the car. Tanaka growled, "Seba, take care of him." Seba nodded and climbed onto the roof, facing Shin. "I should be getting paid extra for this," he muttered. Shin, narrowing his eyes, asked, "So, you want to fight?" Before Shin could react, Seba vanished. In an instant, Seba reappeared and delivered a powerful blow, sending Shin flying into an oncoming car. Then, Seba dropped back into the car, facing Sakamoto. He launched a direct attack at Sakamoto, but Sakamoto easily blocked it and grabbed him by the throat. However, Seba struck the motorcycle's fuel tank, triggering an explosion, allowing Seba to retreat into the car. Tanaka, annoyed, asked, "Did you grab Shin?" Seba casually replied, "Oh, I forgot." Sakamoto and Shin pulled over, now without their motorcycle. Shin groaned. "Well, there goes our ride." Sakamoto, checking his surroundings, replied, "And we lost their trail." Shin, frustrated, clenched his fists. "Who even are these guys?" Taking a deep breath, he explained, "They're from the lab. That's where I was raised. It was an unlicensed research facility experimenting on human subjects. Most of the researchers were just scientists, but I never thought they'd go this far." Sakamoto nodded. "Either way, we're getting Lu back." They arrived at a seemingly normal museum. Sakamoto, confused, asked, "This is the lab?" Shin nodded. "Yeah, but the museum is just a front. The real lab is underground." Sakamoto smirked. "Guess we're visiting your childhood home." They entered the museum, immediately noticing something was off. The place was too quiet. Shin muttered, "They're hiding their secrets behind this place." Just then, two women approached them, offering to take souvenir photos. Shin, irritated, refused immediately. Instead, Sakamoto let them take the picture, saying he wanted a keepsake. He then grabbed a protective mask from one of the exhibits. "This might help block punches," he mused. Shin sighed. "You're ridiculous, let's go." Finally, Shin pointed to a hidden passageway. "The entrance to the underground lab is over there." Inside the lab, Tanaka arrived at the leader's chamber. The boss, a menacing figure surrounded by guards, stared at Lu and asked, "So, this is Shin?" Tanaka, trying to sound confident, replied, "Yes, sir, that's him." The boss frowned. "He looks different." Tanaka, sweating, insisted, "He just changed a lot over the years." The boss's expression darkened. "If you're lying, I'll kill you." Before Tanaka could argue further, Seba stepped forward. "I need to say something." He turned to the boss and calmly admitted, "This isn't Shin, but I know where the real one is." Immediately, guards restrained Tanaka and Lu. Tanaka, furious, snapped at Seba. "You traitor!" The boss, unfazed, turned to Seba. "I trust you. Find Shin and bring him here." Shin identified a hidden mechanism that could lead them underground. He instructed Sakamoto to tilt the bear's head to the right. As soon as Sakamoto did so, a large opening appeared, revealing a closed door. Shin attempted to unlock it but mistakenly entered the wrong code. Suddenly, an automated bear doll activated, revealing concealed weapons from its mouth and opening fire on them. Sakamoto reacted swiftly, launching a direct attack that destroyed the mechanical bear. However, another bear emerged. This time, Shin hurled a spear at it, successfully dismantling it. Before they could catch their breath, a massive robotic dinosaur appeared, swinging its tail in an attempt to strike them. They narrowly dodged the attack. Sakamoto, amused, commented that he wanted to bring his daughter here someday for a photo with such a creature. He then told Shin they needed to disable it without completely destroying it. Shin suggested using Sakamoto's electric stun gun, aiming it at the dinosaur's mouth, where the main control device was located. Sakamoto leaped high into the air and fired at the dinosaur's mouth. The shock hit its mark, but the machine remained operational. The dinosaur retaliated with a series of rapid attacks. Sakamoto dodged effortlessly, maneuvering around the incoming strikes. However, one powerful hit shattered his stun gun. Realizing that careful disabling was no longer an option, Sakamoto abandoned restraint. With a forceful punch, he struck the dinosaur's mouth, destroying its internal mechanism. Following up with a swift kick to its head, he then ascended once more, landing a final devastating blow that severed its tail. As the robotic dinosaur collapsed, Sakamoto remarked that the true nature of dinosaurs was what made them so fascinating. Meanwhile, deep below, a doctor in the underground facility anxiously asked if the main entrance had been breached. Before anyone could respond, an assassin entered, ordering him to return to work immediately. The doctor, exhausted, pleaded for a break so they could continue their research effectively. Instead of sympathy, the assassin struck him, demanding that the research be completed without delay. The doctor, struggling to his feet, insisted that the requested research was impossible to finalize. His words were met with hostility as the assassin pulled out his weapon, aiming it directly at him. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, Shin and Sakamoto intervened, taking down the attacker and saving the doctor. Shin demanded an explanation, questioning what was happening in the facility. The doctor, surrounded by them, explained that the facility had been taken over by assassins. Shin asked about the director of the lab, and the doctor revealed that he was being held in the uppermost room of the facility. He then recounted the events of the past year when a high-ranking assassin named Kashima arrived, proposing a radical idea to revolutionize the art of assassination. He claimed that traditional methods using knives and guns were outdated, and that they needed to evolve, using intelligence and scientific advancements to enhance their techniques. Kashima had seized control, aided by a select group of elite assassins. Shin, absorbing the information, concluded that if they were going to find Lu, this was the place to start. Sakamoto, ever decisive, stated that the only solution was to eliminate every threat in the facility. The doctor, horrified by their response, insisted they needed to escape instead. He warned them that the person overseeing this section of the lab was particularly ruthless. Just then, one of the assassins approached the room. Reacting quickly, the doctor hid Sakamoto and Shin inside a storage cabinet, holding his breath as danger loomed nearby. Meanwhile, in a separate area, Tanaka shouted in frustration, demanding to be freed. Lu, irritated by his complaints, struck him and told him to be quiet. Annoyed, Tanaka muttered that she was a barbaric woman. Ignoring his complaints, Lu used a rock to attempt to break them out of their confinement. Tanaka, skeptical, told her it was pointless. A restrained voice nearby agreed. Lu turned to the source and asked who he was. The man, bound tightly, introduced himself as the director of the laboratory. He revealed that he knew of a possible way for them to escape. Elsewhere, in another section of the facility, Madhur, one of the leading figures of the operation, confronted a doctor. With a twisted smile, he sarcastically commented on the doctor's enthusiasm, asking if he could join in. The doctor, wary, responded that there was no one else there. Madhur stepped closer to the doctor and casually requested to borrow a pen. The moment the doctor handed it over, Madhur suddenly drove the pen deep into the doctor's hand, his voice laced with accusation, calling him a liar. He then turned his gaze toward the other doctors in the room, informing them that one of his assistants had already been eliminated, making it clear that he wouldn't hesitate to do the same if necessary. He ordered them to reveal their own pens as well. One of the doctors, in an attempt to retaliate, threw a pen at Madhur, but he effortlessly dodged it. Shin, observing the scene, made a sarcastic remark about Madhur's speed, considering his age. The scientist behind him, alarmed, scolded Shin for revealing himself so recklessly. For a moment, Shin's mind drifted back to his childhood, recalling memories of being trapped in this very place. He shook off the thought and turned his attention back to Madhur, asking whether he was one of the leaders of this facility. Madhur smirked at the question, amused. He then asked if it would make a difference, questioning whether Shin intended to stand in his way. Without waiting for a response, Madhur pulled out a syringe, announcing that he would now conduct an experiment. experiment. Before Shin could react, Mater vanished in an instant, reappearing behind him and stabbing the syringe into his neck. Shin tried to strike back, but Mater moved at lightning speed, returning to his original position. With a cruel grin, Mater activated a small device in his hand, sending an electric surge through Shin's body. Suddenly, Shin began speaking in a bizarre, incoherent manner. Mater chuckled, explaining that the serum in the syringe disrupted the brain's speech functions by interfering with neural signals through electric impulses. Anger flared in Shin's eyes as he demanded that Mater fix the effects immediately. He charged at him, but Mater effortlessly evaded his attacks. Before Mater could counter, Sakamoto intervened, delivering a powerful strike that sent Mater crashing into the ground. Turning to Shin, Sakamoto spoke calmly but firmly. He admitted that he didn't fully understand what had happened to Shin in this place when he was younger. Then, without hesitation, he asked, "Do you want to clean this place up?" Shin, his voice resolute, responded without hesitation. "Yes." Sakamoto nodded. "Then let's clean up your old home." Meanwhile, outside the museum that concealed the underground lab, two figures arrived, Shishiba and Osaragi. Shishiba looked up at the building, wondering aloud if this place had any connection to Slur. Osaragi, ever focused, reminded him that investigations were part of their job. Shishiba sighed but acknowledged her point. "Fair enough," he said. Without further hesitation, the two of them proceeded inside, unaware of the chaos that awaited them below. The hired assassin came to Sakamoto's store and said he had received some money and wanted to buy a few things. Then he saw Sakamoto's daughter crying. The little girl said, "I wanted to talk to them today about Parents' Day, but none of them showed up," and she cried even more. The assassin approached her and said, "I have some candy to make you stop crying." The girl looked at him but continued crying again. Then the assassin said, "I will find them for you," and sent his bird to search for them. We moved to Lu, who was imprisoned with the lab director. When she found out he was the director, she strangled him in anger and said, "I'm here because of you, isn't that right?" The director replied, "Of course not, I'm tied up in the same prison as you, can't you see that?" Lu said, "If that's true, then tell me everything you know right now." We switched to Sakamoto, Shin, and Mater. Mater told Sakamoto that he knew him and that he had become very famous lately. He added, "You shouldn't have let yourself gain weight like this because I also implanted a device in your neck." Sakamoto replied, "I don't care," and attacked him, but his strike hit Shin instead. Sakamoto said, "I wanted to punch Mater, but my hands moved toward Shin. Why is that?" Mater explained, "I implanted a device in you that makes you lose focus and quickly change targets." Sakamoto then aimed another strike at Mater and said, "I need to set Shin as my target so my attacks will hit Mater." Back in the prison, the director told Lu that he was imprisoned because he refused to follow their orders. Lu asked, "Then why was I imprisoned too?" The director replied, "I don't know and I don't even know who you are." Lu got angry, strangled Tanaka and said, "All of this happened because you mistook me for Shin." The director asked, "Do you mean Shin, the one who reads minds?" Lu replied, "You know him?" The director said, "Of course, I'm the one who gave him that ability." He then told her about the past when Shin was very troublesome and how he changed his life. He recalled how he used to restrict Shin's food because of substances in it that weren't suitable for his body. Shin would say he didn't want it and settled for juice instead. The director also remembered lighting a cigarette and saying that Shin had been left in his care by an old friend. Shin would visit him at night and ask, "What are you working on?" The director replied, "I'm researching things that can make humans superhuman." Shin asked, "Is that fun?" The director said, "Of course it's great. If it succeeds, it will bring happiness to all humans." He also remembered how Shin used to break things in the lab and how he would bathe him. One day, another doctor commented on the director's poor condition, saying he was exhausting himself over something that didn't exist. Shin overheard them and said, "What are you talking about? You're wrong. The director will succeed in his research and bring happiness to everyone." One night, the director's experiment succeeded, and he felt more accomplished than ever. While he was celebrating, Shin entered the room and said he was thirsty. He drank the liquid the director was working on, which upset the director. He asked, "What are you doing?" Shin then spit the liquid back out. The next day, while bathing Shin, the director thought to himself that Shin hadn't been affected and that the liquid hadn't worked. He said, "The important thing is that Shin is okay." But Shin replied, "I'm not okay. That drink was terrible," which surprised the director. After that, Shin began reading people's thoughts, exposing them to each other. He tried to get close to them again, but they all avoided him. He heard their thoughts, saying, "He's become very dangerous. We need to stay away from him." The director told Shin he would create an antidote to return him to normal. Shin replied, "I'm fine with how I am. You should be proud of your research." The director said, "I hurt you with my foolish research. You didn't deserve that." Shin told him, "Your research isn't foolish," and added that he didn't want to stay with them anymore because the lab scientists had become bad people for avoiding him. He then escaped. The director returned to the present and said, "I didn't have the right to meet him after that." Lu asked, "But doesn't Shin feel sad because of this power?" The director asked, "How do you know?" Lu replied, "I live with him every day and Shin loves his power. Since we work with a quiet boss, Shin and I talk to each other in our minds, which makes me jealous. You both need to reconcile with Shin because one of Sakamoto's rules is that if two people are fighting, their conflict shouldn't last more than a day, but you, director, have taken too long. The director poured a substance on the door to break it open. Lu asked, why did you delay escaping when you had the means to do so? The director replied, I don't want to escape and help them with their research. When the door opened, a guard rushed into the prison, but Lu struck him down, defeating him. Back to Sakamoto, he punched Shin and was surprised. He asked, how did that happen? Madhur said, I can control your movements and direct your strikes. He then injected his arm with a serum which gave him extremely strong muscles. He delivered a powerful blow. Shin tried to kick Madhur, but the kick was redirected to Sakamoto. Madhur then injected his leg with another serum, which strengthened his leg muscles. He quickly struck Shin, but Shin blocked it, breaking the glass from the force of the blow. Sakamoto tried to hit Madhur, but Madhur controlled him, immobilizing Sakamoto and delivering a strong punch that sent him crashing into the walls. Madhur said, you should stop. Even the legends of the world couldn't stand against science. Shin told Madhur, that doesn't matter. I'll read your thoughts. Madhur attacked Shin quickly, landing several blows that caused Shin pain. He told them, even if you read my thoughts, my body will act differently. He then asked, why does the boss want this useless power? It's worthless, which angered Shin. Sakamoto picked up Shin and said, you shouldn't dirty your clothes. Cleaning them is exhausting. He then told Madhur, Shin is very strong and I'll prove it to you. Madhur said, I can't reason with you because my intelligence is too high, and you're all idiots. He then injected himself with all the serums at once, turning into a massive man. Shin asked Sakamoto, what should we do? After reading Sakamoto's thoughts, he said, are you serious? Shin then stood in front of Madhur with his back turned, which enraged Madhur. Madhur asked, are you mocking me? And threw a punch, but Shin dodged it. Sakamoto then delivered several strikes to Shin, which Shin dodged so they would hit Madhur instead. This series of powerful punches defeated Madhur, returning him to normal. The doctors carefully removed the needles embedded in the backs of Shin and Sakamoto. Afterward, they approached Shin and thanked him for his help. Shin told them it was no problem since he also belonged to this place, but he mentioned that he now works at Sakamoto's store and is being taken care of by him. One of the doctors turned to Sakamoto and thanked him for looking after Shin. Shin then told Sakamoto he was happy because he managed to dodge Sakamoto's attacks earlier, but he also admitted he might have gone a bit overboard. This led Sakamoto to imagine killing Shin in his mind, which Shin immediately sensed. Angry, Shin asked Sakamoto why he would think that. Sakamoto replied it was because Shin brought up his weight again. They quickly set off to rescue Lu. On the way, Sakamoto told Shin about a powerful fighter they hoped not to encounter. Shin asked if there weren't heroes like that in the big organization Sakamoto used to be part of. Sakamoto explained that the organization had all kinds of people, but this particular killer could take out 10 of them in seconds. Shin was shocked and said he didn't think anyone could be that strong. As they rushed forward, Sakamoto pressed a button that opened a large pit. Before Shin could fall into it, Sakamoto pulled him back just in time. Meanwhile, the boss was with two men, Oniga and Takamoto, and said he didn't care about the type of fighters as long as he had those two by his side. Elsewhere, Shishiba and Osaragi were present. Shishiba told Osaragi they had encountered 3 masterminds and mentioned he was eager to eat them. The boss addressed Shishiba and Osaragi saying, do you know what your problem is, men of the organization? You haven't trained well. Shishiba told him not to get too angry and commented that the place felt like a giant maze. The boss replied, then let me guide you to the exit. Shishiba asked him a question first. Is Slur here? He said. He wanted to kill him and accuse them of breaking the rules, kidnapping innocents, and trying to manufacture weapons against their own regulations. He apologized but said he had to kill them all, though he needed to use the bathroom first. Oniga and Takamoto rushed towards Shishiba, asking the boss if they should kill him now. The boss told them to go ahead. Osaragi, bored, said she didn't find these two interesting. Shishiba told her to calm down. Oniga revealed a weapon from his back and attacked, but Osaragi swiftly used her weapon to cut off both Oniga and Takamoto's heads. The boss picked up Oniga's head, crying, and asked how they could kill so many people. He said these men had families who would grieve for them. Then, he removed a string from his arm and said it was better to kill them. He revealed a weapon from his hands and declared they were unforgivable and must die now. Osaragi asked Shishiba if they should kill the boss. Shishiba replied, I think so, because he's just like his boss. While he was speaking, the boss struck him, injuring him. The boss told Shishiba that his quick movements were thanks to his teacher and said this killing was justified. However, Shishiba came from behind and struck the boss, defeating him. He told the boss he had nothing to do with Slur and left with Osaragi, but the boss regained consciousness and revealed he also had a cybernetic body. Suddenly, Sakamoto fell from above, landing on the boss and knocking him to the ground. Sakamoto then approached Shishiba and greeted him. Shishiba introduced Osaragi to Sakamoto, saying she was a new member. The boss stood up again and recognized Sakamoto, asking why he was there. He mentioned that Sakamoto was the only one who had ever injured his boss. The boss then revealed another weapon from his other hand and even pulled one out of his mouth, ready to fight again. Meanwhile, Shin continued searching for Lu but was confronted by Seba, who launched an attack. Shin dodged and told Seba he hoped Lu was safe. Seba replied that he didn't know anything about her and was just following orders to either kill or capture Shin. Frustrated, Shin told Seba to move aside because he didn't have time to waste. Seba casually mentioned he wanted to earn 20 million before retiring because he hated overtime. Suddenly, Seba disappeared and reappeared behind Shin, injuring his arm and saying he would finish things quickly. Shin tried to read Seba's mind but couldn't predict where the next strike would come from. Seba punched Shin hard, knocking him to the ground, and taunted, "Let's play until it's time to leave." Meanwhile, Sakamoto was dodging the boss's relentless attacks. Shishiba told Sakamoto he would leave and let him handle the fight. Sakamoto said it was fine and bid him farewell, but the boss took advantage of the moment and struck Sakamoto, slamming him into the wall. As Shishiba and Osaragi rushed away, Osaragi asked if they were really going to leave Sakamoto alone with the boss. Shishiba replied that the boss wasn't their target, Slur was. Osaragi argued that the boss would surely kill Sakamoto, but Shishiba confidently said, "I've never seen Sakamoto die." Back with Shin, Seba continued to attack, saying it was difficult to fight someone who could read minds. Shin replied that fighting an invisible man was even harder. Seba decided it was time to end the fight and attacked again. Shin noticed the shadow of Seba's assassin bird and prepared himself. Seba struck him with his weapon, but Shin managed to smear Seba's clothes, marking him. This allowed the assassin bird to target Seba, eliminating him with precision. Sakamoto told the boss that he needed to quickly leave this place because his friend was very dear to him. The boss replied that they were here to advance the world of crime and discover new methods to spread crime as well. Sakamoto told him that he didn't care about other people's feelings and should leave immediately. The boss approached Sakamoto and said he believed his followers had already killed Sakamoto's friend, then revealed a weapon hidden in his mouth. Sakamoto quickly moved toward him and stabbed a pen into his mouth, causing the weapon to explode inside. He warned the boss not to interfere with his friend's affairs, adding that his friends were strong and reliable. The boss angrily said he hated people who contradicted him. Sakamoto replied that he also disliked that, but hated people who talked too much even more. Meanwhile, Lu and the lab director were hiding from the guards. The director said he thought the guards had discovered their escape. Tanaka said he would escape immediately, but Lu firmly grabbed him, telling him he was their hostage and wouldn't go anywhere. Lu thought to herself that she would apologize to Shin once they got out. Elsewhere, Shin thanked the professional assassin for saving him, complimenting his perfect timing, which surprised the assassin. Seba, hiding from the sniper, said snipers usually didn't show themselves openly, but this one was easy to kill since his location was known. The assassin aimed and shot Seba despite his invisibility. Shin remarked it was a ricochet shot. Seba disappeared again and ran quickly, but the assassin said he could track Seba by sound. He fired again but missed. When Seba's movements became silent, the assassin wondered where he was. Shin pointed upward, indicating Seba's location. The assassin aimed again, but Seba threw an iron arrow, injuring the assassin, who couldn't see it due to Seba's invisibility. Seba approached and explained that he wasn't superhuman. His jacket made him invisible. Seba drew a knife to kill the assassin, but the assassin fired another ricochet shot, severing Seba's arm. The assassin stepped back, warning Seba to surrender or the next bullet would hit his head. Suddenly, Seba's arm reappeared, and he stabbed the assassin in the stomach, believing he'd finished him off. Seba vanished again and left. The assassin said his friends called him the #1 sniper, and he couldn't disappoint them. His bird companion brought him another bullet, which he loaded into his weapon. He aimed at Seba, but changed his target at the last moment. Seba mocked him for missing, but the bullet hit a water valve, causing water to spray onto Seba, revealing his invisible form. Shin quickly appeared behind Seba and delivered a powerful blow, defeating him. The assassin praised Shin for understanding his plan. Shin replied that the assassin's thoughts were difficult to read because he thought in complicated ways. Suddenly, an explosion occurred nearby, startling them. Back to Sakamoto and the boss revealed he'd anticipated this outcome and had planted explosives throughout the lab to erase all evidence. He said there were only 20 minutes left before the place turned to dust. Sakamoto replied that 20 minutes was too long. In 5 minutes, the boss would be dead. The boss angrily attacked, but Sakamoto dodged. The boss mocked Sakamoto's weight, saying he couldn't move quickly, while he himself had a perfect body equipped with weapons at 70% capacity, making Sakamoto easy prey. Sakamoto calmly replied that he also had weapons, pulling out stickers, a pen, and a newspaper. Enraged, the boss fired several fiery attacks, but Sakamoto dodged them all. The boss charged again, but Sakamoto folded the pen tip and threw it into the boss's eye, injuring him. The boss said one eye was enough to defeat him, but Sakamoto stuck a sticker from his pocket onto the boss's other eye, blinding him completely. Sakamoto then struck him hard with his belt, knocking him far away. The boss said Sakamoto couldn't kill him because he was considered a 5th-level warrior. Sakamoto asked if he was immortal. The boss replied no, but he couldn't reveal how to kill him because because his teacher had accepted him this way and forbidden him from speaking about it. Suddenly, a train approached from behind. Both jumped high into the air. The boss threw iron ropes at Sakamoto, tying him up and dragging him along the ground. The boss called Sakamoto a hypocrite who couldn't do anything alone. Sakamoto stood on a wooden plank, sliding along the train tracks, freed himself, and pulled the boss into a wall. They crashed through the wall and landed inside a moving train. Sakamoto kicked the boss powerfully, sending him flying to the far end of the train car, surprising the passengers. The boss thought to himself that Sakamoto was famous for his clever killing methods, but wondered where he was now. Suddenly, Sakamoto appeared in his old, slimmer form and delivered a devastating blow, saying he wasn't afraid to kill him even if he was immortal. The boss remembered his past, when he'd killed many people and was scolded by others. His teacher had appeared, killed those people, and told him he was the best man he'd ever known, accepting him with all his flaws. The boss had said people disgusted him, but his teacher told him to ignore others' opinions. Returning to the present, the boss told Sakamoto he had to continue his teacher's path and kill him. The train stopped, and an elderly woman boarded. Sakamoto pushed the boss aside, telling him the seat was for seniors, and politely offered it to the woman. Then, Sakamoto entered another compartment and rapidly attacked the boss. They exited the compartment, and the boss attacked with his weapon, but Sakamoto blocked it with a train pole and struck back repeatedly. The boss revealed another weapon from his stomach and hit Sakamoto hard, knocking him out of the train and into another passing train. However, Sakamoto quickly returned, shocking the boss, who had thought he'd defeated him. The leader grabbed people and threw them at Sakamoto, but Sakamoto caught them well and placed them on the train seats without them getting hurt. Sakamoto told the leader, "You can't understand me," then prepared his hands and said he doesn't like anyone hurting his family. He delivered a powerful punch that sent him out of the train, then a kick that finished him off. He dragged him outside and contacted Shin by phone, telling him he had eliminated the gang leader and that the place would be destroyed in a quarter of an hour. He threw the leader in the garbage cart. We moved to Lu, who was protecting the doctors from falling rocks. Lu asked, "What's happening? Why is the lab collapsing?" The lab director said, "I don't think it's an earthquake." Then the walls almost fell on Lu, but Shin saved her. They avoided each other, then Shin told her they needed to leave this place now. Lu started crying and said she was sorry for saying bad things to him and apologized again. He told her he was also sorry for going too far in his actions, and that he shouldn't have done that. The lab director came and welcomed Shin. Shin said, "Hello, uncle," and told him he hadn't seen him for a long time. He showed his phone and told them there were 10 minutes left before the place exploded. He asked the director, "You know the exits of this place, right?" The director said yes and drew a layout of the lab on the ground. Shin concentrated to hear people's voices, then pointed to them and told them the rest of the people were in this place. He asked Lu and the hired killer to save them, then asked the director to go with him to the lower floor. As they were moving, the director thought, "You've used your power in a good way, Shin." Shin told him, "See, your invention wasn't a failure and became completely successful." The director remembered Shin when he was a child running in front of him. We moved to Shishiba and Osaragi when Shishiba was searching for something through the devices, while Osaragi was removing the walls falling on her. She asked Shishiba, "Have you finished your search because I'm tired of removing the walls falling on me?" Shishiba told her he depended on her. Then he saw Bingo through the surveillance cameras and said he was the one running all this. He told Osaragi they had managed to find out who was behind this. Osaragi told him he was the enemy of the association and behind all this, and told him he appeared to be strong. Shishiba broke the surveillance screen and told her, inevitably, it's his turn to die too. We moved to Shin and the director. The director asked, "Which direction should we go?" Shin told him, "I hear a sound coming from here. Go and save everyone, and I'll save someone from this place too." He went quickly but met Bingo, although he didn't know him. When he got closer, he read his thoughts, which were about Shin's death. But Bingo approached him and said, "So you're Shin," and told him to give his regards to Sakamoto. Lu told Sakamoto that Shin had finally come out. The doctors approached Shin to check on him. Shin asked them, "Are you okay?" and told them the lab had been destroyed. One of the doctors told him it didn't matter, because all the research was here in their heads. Shin heard their thoughts saying he had become handsome but was still short. He told them, "Shut up," and informed them he could hear all their voices. The director approached Sakamoto and thanked him for taking care of Shin. Lu told him, "Don't worry about him with us." We moved to Sakamoto's house where they were having a meal. Shin took the food from in front of Lu because she was sleeping. Lu told Shin she was saving it for last. They started fighting again, and Sakamoto hit them, but in Shin's thoughts. Shin asked him why he did that. Sakamoto told him, "Because you are fools who don't learn from your mistakes." Shin said he couldn't move his body because of the lab battle. Then, Lo mentioned that the pieces of meat were very heavy. Shin replied that they couldn't do anything if someone attacked them now. Sakamoto, after reading in the newspaper that they needed to go to a certain place, took them to a location called the Spring of Comfort, which made the little girl very happy. Shin told Sakamoto that he couldn't go inside because he wasn't able to use his full strength as he felt extremely tired. Sakamoto told him that this place would help him regain his strength and also mentioned that warriors often come here for that reason. reason. Sakamoto went to the staff member and informed him about their number, then asked him to bring towels. The staff member looked at Sakamoto and said he thought this man looked familiar. He brought the towels and looked at Sakamoto's picture, saying he believed he was the killer Sakamoto. When Sakamoto looked at him again, the staff member hid the picture and said he couldn't believe a fighter like him would meet such a great fighter, and that he worked in his family's shop. But this opportunity was good for making his name known among fighters. Then he handed over the towels and told them to enjoy their time. Shin and Sakamoto changed their clothes to enjoy the place. Then they entered the bath, while the staff member watched them and thought he wouldn't miss this opportunity and would be the reason he became known among the great fighters and earned billions. Shin and Sakamoto entered and took a shower. The staff member also entered the bath and thought to himself that he hadn't had a better opportunity than this, and that Sakamoto was completely defenseless, making it easy to eliminate him. Shin and Sakamoto moved to another area with more relaxing water. The staff member came again and said it was the right time to eliminate them because he had set traps in this place. Then Shin told Sakamoto that if he pressed this button, the water would speed up for them to enjoy more. When Shin pressed the button, the staff member pressed his device, causing Shin to be pushed up and fly, leading him to fall on a soap that made him slip and crash into the walls, resulting in bleeding. The staff member said, "What beauty! This push could kill anyone, no matter their weight." He then looked to see where Sakamoto had gone and found him holding onto the pool, unharmed, which made the staff member angry. He tried to increase the water pressure, but nothing happened to Sakamoto. Sakamoto got out of the pool and told Shin to go to the steam room, and they headed there. The staff member, watching them, thought it was good. It would be easy to kill them quickly in this room. He then said he thought Sakamoto was heading to his death. They entered the steam room, and Shin said it was very hot. He thought if he poured water on the stones, the steam would increase. He poured water on the stones while the staff member waited on the other side for him to press the button and hit him. When Shin poured the water, a large amount of steam rose in his face, raising the temperature and igniting a fire, but Sakamoto was not affected at all. Shin then approached Sakamoto and told him that this place now resembled their training area. The staff member looked at Sakamoto and got very angry because the fire had no effect on him. Sakamoto exited the room carrying Shin and threw him into the cold water pool. When the staff member realized he was going there, he froze the pool to expose them to death, but Sakamoto was not affected at all, while Shin was exposed to freezing. After that, they went to the acid of the waterfall, and the staff member increased the water pressure on them, which caused Shin to be hit and pushed away. But Sakamoto didn't move at all, making the staff member very angry because he tried to kill Sakamoto by all means and couldn't do it. Then Sakamoto, exhausted, carried Shin out and placed him on a chair because he couldn't move. The staff member looked at Sakamoto angrily and said he thought it was Sakamoto because he couldn't kill him at all. Sakamoto and Lo played table tennis together, and they were very fast in the game. The staff member remembered his past when his father told him to take care of his family, but he told his father he would be a professional killer. His father replied that he wasn't cut out for that, Yutaro. Yutaro returned and thought to himself that killing Sakamoto wasn't easy for a failure like him. Then two people came to Taro and called out to him. One of them said, "Taro, I thought you told us you were going abroad and now you're working in your family's bath?" They started laughing at him. Taro, angry, said, "What's it to you?" The bald man replied, "How can you talk to us like that?" and punched him, causing Taro to fall and bleed from his face. Then he placed his foot on Taro's back and said, "You shouldn't work in anything important. Your place is working in baths because it suits you." Taro replied, "Don't insult my father's bath." The bald man said, "This place is just a store for filth." Sakamoto threw a table tennis ball at the bald man, hitting him and knocking him down. The bald man's friend went to check on him, then grabbed Taro and asked, "What did you do to my friend?" Sakamoto threw an ice cream stick at the other one, pushing him away from Taro and crashing into the drink fridge. Then Sakamoto took the ice cream stick again and threw it in the trash. Taro looked at Sakamoto and said, "Didn't you realize I wanted to kill you?" Sakamoto replied, "Your bath is great," and told him he would come back here again. Then they left. Taro called his father and told him he would inherit their business and stay away from assassination because it wasn't suitable for him at all. We moved to the store, and Shin said he was more exhausted because of these public baths. We moved to a restaurant where Shin and Sakamoto were eating. Then Lo came to Shin and told him she had two drinks, one cola and the other a mix for her, and asked him to choose one without reading her thoughts. Shin chose one of the drinks and spat it out because he picked the wrong one. Lo told him that he would pay for this dish because he made a mistake, which made Shin angry. Then Lo said, "How beautiful family restaurants are." Shin replied, "They exist in every city. Don't you have any?" She told him she had never been to restaurants before and had a personal chef who cooked everything for her. Shin said, "I forgot you were the daughter of a mafia boss." Then he asked her, "Don't you miss your friends?" She replied, "Of course I miss them, but I want to continue this peaceful life because it's very good." Shin said, "I understand that," then told them he would order another meal. When he did, some people came and pointed guns at Sakamoto and Shin. One of the villains shot at Sakamoto, but he caught the bullet with a fork. Then Sakamoto punched the man and slammed him onto the table, while Shin punched the other man, knocking him to the ground. Then a restaurant employee came and asked Sakamoto what he wanted to drink. Sakamoto said he wanted watermelon juice. The man who was hit on the table said, "What a strange man your age asking for this juice. I think you're asking for something else because of your weight." Lo asked, "Is that you, Tang?" Tang woke up and said to her, "Hello, ma'am, we haven't met in a while." Sakamoto asked Lo if he was her brother. She replied, "No, he's just a member of the organization." Tang sat next to Shin and said to Lo, "We haven't had a leader since that incident, so please come back with us and be our leader. Stop belittling yourself with these brutes." Lo replied, "No, I won't go with you, and I won't return to the mafia life. Let whoever wants to lead do so." A lot of blood appeared from Tang, causing him to fall on Lo. Then Sakamoto asked, "What's wrong with this man?" Shin went to Lo and asked her not to cry, cleaning her face from the blood. Lo said, "He was following me everywhere I went, and his behavior was strange because he was also a twisted mafia advisor." Tang thought to himself, "If you noticed my following you, that's a good thing." Shin heard his thoughts and said, "He's really a crazy man." Lo told Tang that she wouldn't return with him, and that she was now working in Sakamoto's store. Tang said he understood now that Sakamoto was the obstacle between them. Shin asked him, "What are you going to do? If you want to do something, we're ready too." Tang replied, "No, I'm not stupid enough to attack someone while I'm defenseless," and he stepped back. Shin asked, "Why did you step back?" Sakamoto said, "It's more comfortable for him." Tang said, "Then let's fight for Lady Lo, but in a mafia way." Shin replied, "That's in your dreams because your death is faster now." Tang approached them and told them, "This is in your best interest too," and informed them that if Sakamoto defeated him, he would tell them who put the bounty on his death. Shin said, "And you know who it is." Tang replied, "Don't underestimate mafia intelligence." Shin and Sakamoto told them they disagreed, but Lo stepped forward and said she agreed to that. Shin told Lo, "But if we lose, you'll return to mafia life again." Lo replied to Shin, "It doesn't matter. Since I'm a member of the Sakamoto family, I must help him in any way." Tang told them, "Follow me now," and they went with him to another strange place. When they arrived, Tang said, "You shouldn't enter in these clothes. You need to change." They changed their clothes and entered another place, which was a gathering spot for members of the underworld. He also told them it was a secret club. Then Tang brought them bags full of money and told them he brought this money for them, saying that whoever makes a lot of money would win, and they would meet again in 2 hours. Lo was surprised by the gambling games, but Sakamoto told her not to worry because they had Shin, the mind reader, with them. Shin said that he would read the thoughts of the players and the dealer, making it hard for them to lose. Lo mentioned that she was completely ignorant of the game and didn't even know its rules. She told them that although Wu-Tang wasn't good at fighting, he was very smart and had risen through the ranks in their organization with his intelligence. She also said he was a man of unique phenomena. Then they headed towards Wu-Tang and found out that he had doubled his money incredibly fast. Wu-Tang then told them he would bring back his lady just as quickly. Sakamoto told him he would do his best to keep her with him.